Hey everyone. Welcome back for the third part of What If Naruto Was Raised by Kushina? As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. As always, the full story is already out over there for you guys along with about 50 other different stories you can enjoy. Also, feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Chapter 6. The immediate aftermath of the battle was a strange, echoing silence. The roar of combat faded, replaced by the distant sounds of crackling fires, the shouts of Anbu organizing cleanup crews, and the low, mournful groans of the injured. Konoha stood battered but unbroken. On the rooftop, the rising sun cast long, grim shadows. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood surveying the damage to his village, the weight of leadership settling heavily on his aged shoulders. Orochimaru's discarded torso lay nearby, a grotesque reminder of the battle fought. Kushina stood beside him, her usual fiery energy replaced by a quiet, somber exhaustion. The Raikage, his massive arms crossed, looked out with a grudging respect. Your village held, the Raikage stated, his voice a low rumble. Orochimaru threw everything he had at you, crippled Kages and all, and you threw him back. Impressive. We were prepared, Hiruzen replied, his voice weary. Orochimaru underestimated our resolve. And, he glanced at Kushina, the fury of an Uzumaki. Kushina just shook her head, her gaze distant. Too many died. War always has a cost, said gruffly. But victory allows you to rebuild. He turned his full attention back to Hiruzen, his expression intense. You and I have matters to discuss, Sarutobi. Privately. Once the dust settles. His eyes flickered down towards the arena, a calculating gleam within them. Hiruzen met his gaze steadily, understanding the unspoken implications. Indeed. After the dead have been honored and the village is secure. There is much to be done. The Raikage grunted, accepting the delay. The political games would wait, but the pieces were already moving. Down in the arena, Naruto stirred, grogginess giving way to the dull ache of profound chakra exhaustion. He found himself lying on a medical cot set up near the competitor's tunnel, an IV drip attached to his arm. Kushina was sitting beside him, a warm, damp cloth on his forehead. Hey, he mumbled, his voice hoarse. Did we win? Kushina gave him a soft, tired smile, gently brushing his hair back. Yeah, Sochi. We won. She kept her tone light, recounting only the basics of Orochimaru's retreat and the end of the invasion, saving the heavier political discussions for later. Naruto listened, relief washing over him. He closed his eyes again, letting the exhaustion claim him. The fight was over. For now. As medics tended to the wounded and Anbu secured Orochimaru's remains for analysis, the village began the slow, painful process of cleaning up. The Chunin exams, started as a symbol of peace and prosperity, had ended as a crucible, forging new heroes and revealing shadowed threats. The world had seen Konoha bleed, but they had also seen it stand defiant, led by a new generation and protected by the legacy of its past. The ashes were settling, but from them, new alliances and new challenges were on the horizon. Days turned into weeks. Konoha, scarred but resilient, slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Funerals were held, repairs began, and the weight of the invasion settled into a grim memory. Naruto recovered quickly, his Uzumaki vitality augmented by Kurama's chakra erasing the strain of the final battle. Sasuke, under Itachi's watchful eye, healed both physically and mentally, the experience in the forest forging a new, sharper focus in him. The Suna siblings, along with the unconscious Gaara, were kept in a secure, comfortable location within the Uzumaki Namikaze compound, under Kushina's direct supervision as she began the delicate process of analyzing Gaara's volatile seal. The political landscape, however, remained turbulent. The Raikage and his entourage stayed in Konoha, ostensibly for diplomatic discussions, but everyone knew the real negotiations were happening behind closed doors, centered around the blonde Jinchuriki who had become the hero of the exams. Finally, the summons came. Kushina was called to the Hokage's office. She arrived to find Hiruzen sitting behind his desk, looking weary but resolute. Across from him sat the fourth Raikage, his massive arms crossed, an impassive expression on his face. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Kushina, Hiruzen began, gesturing for her to sit. Raikage Dono and I have been discussing the future relations between our villages. He has made a formal proposal regarding a strengthened alliance. He looked pointedly at Raikage Dono, perhaps you would do the honors of stating your conditions. The Raikage met Kushina's sharp, wary gaze without flinching, though a bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. He stood, his towering presence filling the room. Konoha has proven its strength. Kumo respects strength. An alliance between us would guarantee peace for a generation. He paused, his gaze unwavering. My condition is this: Naruto Namikaze will come to Kumagakure. He will train under my direct supervision for 3 years. Learn our ways, our lightning style, our speed. Become stronger. Kushina's eyes narrowed, but she remained silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Furthermore, the Raikage continued, his voice dropping slightly, to truly bind our villages, to ensure this alliance is more than just paper, he will marry at least one Kunoichi from my village. The dam broke. Are you out of your damn mind? Kushina exploded, slamming her hands on Hiruzen's desk, the wood groaning under the impact. Her chakra flared, a suffocating wave of pure, incandescent maternal fury that made the Raikage instinctively take half a step back. You want to take my son, my only child, away for 3 years and marry him off like some prize stallion? Have you completely lost your senses? It is a political necessity. I countered, trying to regain his footing despite the oppressive pressure Kushina was radiating. A bond of blood is the strongest alliance. He is not a bargaining chip, Kushina roared, her red hair beginning to lift slightly around her face. He is my son. Kushina, calm yourself, Hiruzen said, his voice firm but gentle, placing a calming hand on her arm. She took a deep, shuddering breath, reining in her fury, but her eyes remained blazing. She turned her glare back to the Raikage, her voice dangerously low. And just who, she spat, did you have in mind for this? Political necessity? The Raikage visibly swallowed, the bead of sweat now a small rivulet. That would ultimately be his choice, of course, he stammered slightly. But Kumagakure has many fine kunoichi. Strong, capable women. He seemed to gather his courage. In my mind. Someone like Samui, a skilled strategist and swordswoman. Or perhaps, he paused, choosing his next words carefully, Yugito ni. Kushina froze. Yugito ni. The Jinchuriki of the two tales. The suggestion wasn't merely political, it carried a deeper, more significant weight. Pairing two Jinchuriki. It was a statement of power, a potential dynasty. The fact that the Raikage considered another Jinchuriki, someone who understood the burden, tempered Kushina's rage slightly. It wasn't just a crass political move, there was a layer of understanding there. This, Kushina said, her voice regaining its composure, though still edged with ice, is not a decision that can be made lightly. Or quickly. We will need to think on it. And I will need to discuss it with my son. She looked A directly in the eye. What of the logistics? If this were to happen, and they were to have a child? Where would their loyalties lie? The child would be raised in Kumagakure, a citizen of the cloud, stated firmly. Unacceptable, Hiruzen interjected immediately. Minato Namikaze's grandchild would be a citizen of Konoha. Before the argument could escalate, Kushina held up a hand, silencing them both. A cold, calculating gleam entered her eyes, the fury replaced by the sharp mind of an Uzumaki matriarch. I have a counterproposal. Kumagakure played a significant role in the destruction of my homeland, Uzushio Gakure. A crime for which no reparations were ever made. The Raikage stiffened, recognizing the historical grievance. If this alliance is to proceed, if my son is to spend 3 years under your tutelage and potentially bind his future to your village, Kushina continued, her voice gaining strength, then Kumagakure will pay for the full reconstruction of Uzushio Gakure. Every stone, every seal. The island will be returned to Uzumaki administration, a neutral territory under our protection. Her gaze hardened. Any children born of this union will reside there, on Uzumaki soil. They will hold dual citizenship in both Kumo and Konoha, their loyalties tied to both villages through their heritage, but ultimately bound to their ancestral homeland. Hiruzen and A stared at her, stunned by the audacity and brilliance of the proposal. It addressed the political need for a bond, secured Naruto's lineage, and demanded a heavy price for a past transgression, turning it into a foundation for a new future. A was silent for a long moment. The destruction of Uzu was a dark chapter in Kumo's history, one his predecessors had orchestrated. Rebuilding it. It was a staggering cost, both financially and politically. But Kushina's terms were ironclad. To gain the alliance, to secure a connection to the Uzumaki legacy and Konoha's rising star, the past would have to be confronted. Rebuilding Uzushio, he murmured, the weight of his proposal settling on him. He looked from Kushina's unwavering face to Hiruzen's thoughtful one. He saw the strategic value. An independent, allied Uzumaki nation, led by Naruto's potential children, tied to both Konoha and Kumo. It was a masterstroke. We'll consider your terms, said finally, his voice heavy. This requires further discussion within my own council. We should convene again, once the immediate matters in your village are settled, and once you have spoken with your son. He gave a stiff nod. Hokage dono. Kushina dono. With that, he turned and left the office, leaving behind a silence thick with the weight of nations shifting. That evening, the Namikaze Uzumaki compound was quiet. Naruto sat on the Engawa overlooking the garden, polishing his sword, the moonlight glinting off the steel. The sounds of the recovering village were a distant hum. He had spent the afternoon meditating, processing the events of the exams and the invasion, the encounter with Orochimaru a lingering shadow in his mind. Kushina slid the door open and sat beside him, placing 2 cups of steaming tea on the wooden porch. She didn't speak immediately, just watched him work, the silence comfortable and familiar. You fought well, she said finally, her voice soft. Not just Gaara. You handled yourself like a true shinobi through the entire exam. Naruto stopped polishing, looking out at the moonlit garden. It wasn't enough. Orochimaru got away. Sasuke. Sasuke is healing, Kushina interrupted gently. And Itachi is watching over him. You did what you could. You saved him from the curse mark in the forest. That was a victory in itself. She took a sip of her tea. But the invasion. It changed things. The political landscape is shifting. Naruto turned, sensing the shift in her tone. What happened after I passed out? Kushina took a deep breath. The Raikage made a formal proposal for an alliance. A strong one, between Kumo and Konoha. Naruto nodded slowly. Makes sense. After what we showed them. He had conditions, Kushina continued, her voice carefully neutral. For the alliance to be sealed. She met his gaze. He wants you to go to Kumagakure. To train under him for 3 years. Naruto blinked, surprised. Train? With the Raikage? Seriously? The idea was instantly appealing. The Raikage's speed, his mastery of lightning style. It was a chance to learn skills that complemented his own, skills reminiscent of his father's. That's unexpected. But maybe. That wasn't his only condition, Kushina cut him off, her expression hardening slightly. He also demands that, to seal the alliance, you marry a Kumo Kunoichi. Naruto choked on air, tea sputtering from his mouth. Marry? Are you kidding me? I'm 13. He stared at her, aghast. He wants an arranged marriage? Like some feudal lord? It's politics, Sochi, Kushina said, her voice tight. Binding villages through blood is an old tradition. Crude, but effective. That's insane. Naruto stood up, pacing the Engawa. I'm not some political tool. I have my own life, my own goals. I'm going to be Hokage, not some Kumo stud. I know, Kushina said calmly, watching him pace. Which is why I made a counterproposal. Naruto stopped, turning back to her. What did you do? She explained her terms, Kumo funding the complete reconstruction of Uzushio, the island returned to Uzumaki administration, and any potential children holding dual citizenship but residing in their ancestral homeland. Naruto listened, his initial anger slowly giving way to a dawning understanding. Rebuilding Uzushio. The place he had trained, the source of his clan's legacy. It was a powerful, deeply resonant idea. It wasn't just a political marriage anymore, it was tied to the rebirth of their clan. Rebuild. Uzu? He murmured, the weight of the concept settling on him. Yes, Kushina affirmed. A home for our clan. A neutral ground. A place where your children, if you have them, would belong to both villages, yet stand apart. She looked at him intently. It's a heavy price for Kumo to pay, a way for them to atone for their part in Uzu's destruction. But it's also a chance for us, Naruto. A chance to reclaim our legacy. Naruto sat back down, his mind racing. 3 years away. Training under one of the fastest shinobi alive. The chance to see Uzushio rebuilt. But marriage? Who? Who did he even suggest? Naruto asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. He mentioned 2 possibilities, though he said the choice would be yours, Kushina replied carefully. Samui, one of the Genin from the exam. A skilled kenjutsu user and strategist. She paused. And Yugito ni. Naruto looked up sharply. Yugito. The Jinchuriki of the 2 tails. He remembered her calm, assessing gaze, the faint echo of a shared power he had sensed. Marrying another Jinchuriki. Someone who might actually understand the burden he carried. It felt different from simply marrying a stranger for political gain. It's your decision, Naruto, Kushina said softly, placing a hand on his knee. Completely. I shut down the Raikage's initial demand. My counterproposal puts us in control. If you say no, the alliance probably falls through, but we won't force you. Ever. Naruto was silent for a long time, staring up at the moon. He thought of his father, of the legacy he carried. He thought of the village, of the peace Hiruzen was trying to build. He thought of Uzushio, the ghost of a home he felt strangely connected to. And he thought of Yugito, another soul carrying a tailed beast. What do you think? He projected inward. Kurama, who had been listening silently to the entire exchange between Naruto and Kushina, let out a noncommittal grunt, the sound like distant thunder in Naruto's mindscape. The Raikage is a fool if he thinks he can control you simply by keeping you in his village. His brute strength might offer some lessons in taijutsu, but his understanding of chakra is crude compared to yours or your mother's. Naruto felt the giant fox shift within the seal, the massive tail swishing thoughtfully. However, his mastery over lightning release is undeniable. Minato himself acknowledged A's speed. Learning that control, adding it to your own arsenal. It would make you significantly more dangerous. And the marriage? Naruto asked, the thought still feeling foreign and uncomfortable. Humph. A political maneuver, nothing more, Kurama scoffed. Humans and their ridiculous mating rituals. But the Uzumaki woman's terms are shrewd. Rebuilding your clan's home using Kumo's resources is a fitting irony. As for the potential partners, the Nibi Jinchuriki is the only one of interest. A flicker of ancient memory, of shared power and isolation, passed through the fox's thoughts. Binding yourself to another vessel. It creates complications. But also possibilities. She, at least, might understand the cage you both inhabit. Kurama paused, his crimson eye fixing on Naruto's mental projection. Ultimately, brat, the choice is yours. Kumo offers power and a path to reclaiming your clan's legacy, paid for by your rivals. But it comes at the cost of 3 years away from your home and binds your future in ways you cannot yet predict. Choose wisely. Naruto absorbed the fox's words, the pragmatic, centuries-old perspective cutting through his own youthful uncertainty. Kurama was right. The training was valuable. The chance to rebuild Uzushio was invaluable. The marriage was a complication, but Kushina's terms had turned it from a surrender into a strategic advantage. Yugito. The idea still felt strange, but not repulsive. A shared understanding. He took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. He saw the path forward, not just for himself, but for his clan, for the village. It was a sacrifice, a gamble, but the potential rewards were immense. Okay, he said quietly, meeting his mother's gaze, his decision solidifying. I'll do it. I'll go. He hesitated, the reality of the next condition settling in. The marriage part. I still don't like it. Binding my future like that. It feels wrong. But if it has to happen for the alliance, for Uzu. He looked at his mother, his expression earnest. Under your terms. Only under your terms. And I would need to meet them first. Both of them. Properly. Before agreeing to anything. Kushina pulled him into a fierce hug, a complex mix of relief, pride, and maternal worry swirling within her. You are your father's son, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Always thinking of others, carrying burdens you shouldn't have to. She pulled back, her expression becoming determined, the matriarch taking charge once more. All right. Then we have a meeting to schedule with the Raikage. He accepted my terms regarding Uzu, in principle. Now we finalize the details. Her eyes gleamed with a familiar, dangerous light. And Kumo has a homeland to rebuild. The final meeting was held a week later, once the immediate post-invasion chaos had settled. Hiruzen, Kushina, Naruto, and the Raikage gathered in the Hokage's office, the atmosphere formal but underpinned by the magnitude of the decisions being made. My council has agreed, the Raikage stated, his voice a low rumble that conveyed finality. Kumagakure accepts the terms. We will fund and provide resources for the full reconstruction of Uzushio Gakure under Uzumaki administration. The cost is significant, he conceded with a slight grimace, but a necessary price to mend old wounds and forge a new future. He looked directly at Naruto. In return, you will come to Kumo. 3 years. You will train under me, learn our ways. Naruto met his intense gaze, nodding slowly. I accept. And the matter of the marriage? Hiruzen prompted gently. Will be decided upon completion of the training period, the Raikage confirmed. As agreed, the choice rests with Naruto Dono, contingent upon his meeting and spending time with the candidates. His eyes briefly flickered with amusement. We trust his judgment. Kushina just gave a sharp, pointed look at the Raikage, a silent reminder of her own terms regarding potential offspring. With the pact sealed, preparations began. Naruto spent his last few weeks in Konoha saying his goodbyes. He sparred one last time with Sasuke, a fierce, unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. He shared ramen with Shikamaru and Choji, promising to write, a promise Shikamaru knew was troublesome but appreciated. He endured Jiraiya's tearful, overly dramatic farewell, narrowly avoiding several attempts by the Sannin to impart some manly wisdom under Kushina's watchful glare. The departure itself was quiet. Just Naruto and Kushina at the gate, Hiruzen offering a final, solemn nod. Learn well, Naruto-kun. Grow strong. Konoha awaits your return. Kushina hugged him tightly. Be safe, Sochi. Listen to the Raikage. Mostly. And, she whispered, her voice fierce, don't let anyone push you around, you know. Naruto nodded, slinging his pack over his shoulder. He took one last look at the village, his home, then turned and walked towards the horizon, towards a new land and an unknown future. The journey to Kumagakure was long but uneventful. Naruto traveled alone, a condition insisted upon by both Kushina and the Raikage, Kushina, to ensure Naruto relied on his own skills, and the Raikage, to assess the boy's ability to navigate potentially hostile territory independently. Naruto moved with the speed and stealth honed over years of training, a ghost flitting through the land of lightning's mountainous terrain. When he finally arrived at the massive gates leading up to the hidden village, he didn't announce himself with fanfare. He simply appeared before the startled guards, his travel-stained clothes doing little to hide the palpable aura of power that clung to him. Naruto Namikaze of Konoha, he stated calmly, presenting the official scroll bearing the Hokage's seal and the Raikage's invitation. The guards, clearly briefed on his arrival, exchanged wide-eyed glances before scrambling to open the gates, their professional demeanor barely masking their awe and apprehension. Stepping through the gates was like entering another world. Konoha was a village nestled amongst trees, sprawling and organic. Kumagakure was a fortress carved into the heavens. Buildings clung to sheer cliff faces, connected by intricate networks of bridges and stairs that seemed impossibly high. The air was thin and crisp, carrying the faint scent of ozone and the distant rumble of thunderclouds that perpetually clung to the highest peaks. Shinobi moved with a sharp, disciplined energy, their movements precise, their expressions often guarded. It was a village built on strength, verticality, and a constant awareness of the precarious heights. Naruto took it all in, his senses sharp, analyzing the architecture, the patrol routes, the very feel of the village's chakra. It was different, starkly different from home, but impressive in its own right. He hadn't taken more than 20 steps into the main plaza when two figures landed silently before him, blocking his path. One was Samui, the cool, blonde Kunoichi he recognized from the Chunin exam finals. Her expression was calm and professional, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her sword. The other was Yugito Ni. She stood with a relaxed, almost feline grace, her blonde hair framing a face that held both a quiet intensity and a hint of wary curiosity. Her cat-like eyes assessed him, recognizing the bijou within him. Naruto Namikaze, Samui stated, her voice even and polite, though lacking warmth. Lord Raikage sends his greetings. We have been assigned to escort you to your accommodations and familiarize you with the village layout. Naruto looked from Samui's professional distance to Yugito's more direct, assessing gaze. He saw the setup immediately. Sending the only two Kunoichi mentioned in the marriage condition as his official welcome wagon? The Raikage wasn't exactly subtle. A small, amused chuckle escaped his lips. Shrewd old man, he thought, a smirk playing on his face. He quickly schooled his features back into a polite, neutral expression. Thank you, Naruto replied, giving a slight, formal bow. I appreciate the welcome. Lead the way. As they began to walk, navigating the complex, multi-leveled pathways of Kumo, Samui maintained a professional silence, pointing out key landmarks, the Raikage's tower, the training grounds, the Shinobi barracks, with concise descriptions. Yugito, however, walked beside him, her movements fluid, her gaze occasionally flicking towards him. So, she said finally, her voice a low, smooth purr. The infamous son of the Yellow Flash. You made quite an impression at the exams. Just doing my job, Naruto replied easily, meeting her gaze. He could feel the controlled power simmering beneath her calm exterior, the presence of Matatabi. It was a familiar feeling, yet distinct from Kurama's overwhelming presence. Defeating Gaara of the Sand and casually dismantling two other teams isn't just doing your job, Yugito countered, a faint smile touching her lips. Don't try to play humble. It doesn't suit the rumors. Maybe the rumors are exaggerated, Naruto suggested, his own smile returning. Perhaps, Yugito conceded. Or perhaps they don't do you justice. Samui shot Yugito a brief, slightly annoyed glance before interjecting. Your accommodations are in the sector reserved for foreign dignitaries and long-term guests. Lord Raikage expects you in his office for your first training session tomorrow morning at 0500 hours sharp. Do not be late. Wouldn't dream of it, Naruto said, still feeling the faint amusement at the Raikage's blatant maneuvering. 3 years. It was going to be an interesting 3 years. He looked up at the towering peaks surrounding the village, a new sense of challenge, and perhaps even excitement, beginning to build within him. He was in the heart of the storm cloud now. It was time to see if he could ride the lightning. The next morning, precisely at 0500 hours, Naruto stood waiting outside the Raikage's tower. The pre-dawn air was biting cold at this altitude, but he stood perfectly still, his chakra circulating gently to keep him warm, his senses alert. The massive doors swung open, and the Raikage strode out, already clad in his cage robes but radiating an energy that suggested he'd been awake for hours. He didn't offer a greeting, just a curt nod. Follow me. They moved with blinding speed, not through the village, but up, scaling the sheer mountain faces surrounding Kumo with gravity-defying leaps that left Naruto mildly impressed. They ascended far above the village proper, into the perpetually storm-racked peaks where jagged rocks pierced the swirling clouds like angry teeth. They finally came to a stop on a wide, flat plateau, miles from anywhere, the wind howling around them. Below, Kumo was a distant collection of lights nestled in the cloud sea. This will be our training ground, declared, his voice easily cutting through the wind. No distractions. No audience. Just power. He turned to face Naruto, his expression intense. Your speed at the exams was impressive. Faster than any Genin has a right to be. Almost as fast as his. Naruto met the Raikage's gaze, unflinching. My father was the fastest. He was, conceited, a flicker of old rivalry in his eyes. And I was the only one who could keep up. He slammed his massive fists together, blue lightning crackling around them. Today, we see if you've inherited more than just his hair color. We begin with the foundation of Kumo's strength, the lightning release chakra mode. He began explaining the theory, the intricate control required to coat one's body in lightning chakra, amplifying speed, strength, and reflexes to superhuman levels. Naruto listened intently, absorbing the information, comparing it to his own burgeoning understanding of chakra natures. After an hour of theory, the practical application began. It was brutal. The Raikage was a relentless, unforgiving teacher, his methods direct and overwhelming. He pushed Naruto to channel his lightning chakra, correcting his flow with jarring physical force, demanding absolute perfection. During a brief lull, as Naruto caught his breath, the wind whipping his blonde hair around his face, he looked at the imposing figure of the Raikage. The question that had been nagging at him finally surfaced. Raikage-sama, Naruto began, his tone respectful but direct. Can I ask you something? Grunted, turning to face him. Speak. This deal. Konoha gets Uzushio rebuilt, funded entirely by Kumo. Kumo gets me. For 3 years. And maybe a political marriage. Naruto met the cage's gaze squarely. It seems lopsided. Konoha gains a homeland, Kumo gains an apprentice who might cause an international incident by painting your mustache pink again. The Raikage stared at him, surprised by the boy's bluntness. Then, a low, rumbling chuckle escaped his lips, echoing off the surrounding peaks. You think this is just about you, boy? His amusement faded, replaced by a stern, assessing look. Your mother drove a hard bargain, I'll give her that. Rebuilding Uzushio is a steep price. But you are wrong to think Kumo doesn't benefit. He gestured vaguely towards the village far below. My shinobi. They grow complacent. They hear the legends of their cage, but they lack a benchmark. Having you here, Minato's son, a shinobi already operating at a level far beyond his years. Your very presence will force them to push themselves harder. You are a whetstone upon which I will sharpen my own village's blades. He paused, his expression turning more introspective. And yes, the alliance with Konoha is crucial. Signed treaties are paper, easily burned. True alliances are built on trust, on shared strength, on personal bonds. He looked directly at Naruto. Forging a bond with you, the future of Konoha, is worth more than any army. A shadow crossed the Raikage's face, a hint of old frustration. Since Minato died, there has been no one. No rival. No one who could truly match my speed, my power. He looked at Naruto again, and a fierce, challenging glint ignited in his eyes. I see a shadow in you. That same impossible speed. That same unwavering will. Perhaps you can become that rival. He grinned, a wide, predatory expression. I will teach you everything I know. I will push you until you break, or until you surpass me. If you do, the Raikage shrugged, a gesture of pure, warrior's honesty, so be it. A cage needs rivals to stay sharp. And frankly, his grin widened, it's been boring without one. Naruto stared, absorbing the Raikage's raw honesty. It wasn't just politics. It wasn't just about using him. It was about respect, rivalry, and a cage's deep-seated need to be pushed to his absolute limit. A slow smile spread across Naruto's face, mirroring the Raikage's fierce grin. All right then, old man, Naruto said, lightning beginning to crackle faintly around his own fists. Don't disappoint me. Naruto gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face despite the biting wind. Blue lightning crackled erratically around his body, sputtering and flaring. He was trying to maintain the Raikage's lightning release chakra mode, but the control required was immense, far more delicate than simply unleashing raw power. Focus, brat, A roared, his own body enveloped in a steady, controlled aura of crackling blue energy. Your output is sloppy. You're leaking chakra like a broken faucet. Feel the flow. Tame it. He demonstrated, flickering instantaneously from one side of the plateau to the other, leaving a trail of ozone in his wake. It is an extension of your will, not a wild storm. Naruto took a deep breath, trying to smooth out the chaotic energy. He could feel Kurama observing silently from within, offering no help but radiating a faint amusement at his struggle. Lightning was not his natural element, and forcing it into a controlled armor was proving incredibly difficult. It's harder than it looks, old man. Naruto shot back, managing to hold the flickering aura steady for a few seconds before it dissipated again. Excuses are for the weak, A bellowed, preparing to launch into another demanding drill. Suddenly, a new voice, loud, rhythmic, and utterly out of place, echoed across the desolate mountain peak. Yo, check the mic, 1-2, up high in the blue. Big bro A trainin', what you gonna do? Got a new student, blonde and bright, gonna teach him how to fight with all his might. Oh yeah. A figure landed dramatically on the plateau between Naruto and the Raikage, striking a ridiculous pose. He wore sunglasses, had 7 swords strapped to his back, and radiated an easygoing, powerful chakra signature that felt strangely familiar to Naruto. The Raikage froze mid-stance. A vein pulsed violently in his temple. B. He growled, his voice dangerously low. What are you doing here? This is a restricted training area. Killer B, the Jinchuriki of the 8 Tails, completely ignored his brother's fury. His gaze landed on Naruto, and his eyes lit up behind his shades. Well, looky here, what do we see? Another Jinchuriki, just like me. Konoha's hero, full of flair, nice to meetcha, I declare. He offered Naruto a fist bump, his knuckles extended. Naruto, completely forgetting the grueling training and his frustration, broke into a wide, delighted grin. He'd heard stories about the Raikage's eccentric brother, the rapping Jinchuriki. He instantly liked the guy's energy. He met B's fist bump with his own. Yo. Nice to meet you too. Naruto replied, effortlessly falling into B's rhythm. Naruto Uzumaki's the name, trainin' hard to win the game. Uzumaki, hear the sound. Whirlpool power all around. B rapped back, striking another pose. Got that fox locked up inside? Nothing to fear, nowhere to hide. Yeah. Kurama's kinda grumpy, but he's cool. Naruto added enthusiastically. B. The Raikage's roar finally broke through their impromptu rap session. Get out of here. This is a private training session of vital importance to village security. Chill out, bro, don't blow a fuse. Just spreadin' positive Jinchuriki news. B countered, turning to his brother. Besides, saw you trainin' from afar, lookin' stiff like a rusty car. Thought I'd drop by, lend a hand, make this lightnin' trainin' grand. I do not need your help. A seethed, lightning crackling around him with barely contained fury. Actually, Naruto interjected, turning back to the Raikage, a thoughtful look on his face. Maybe he's right. You keep saying to feel the flow, but B-san seems pretty chill while using his chakra. Maybe a different approach? B beamed. See, bro? The kid gets the groove. Gotta relax, make that chakra move. He started doing a little dance, humming a beat. The Raikage looked from his ridiculously dancing brother to Naruto, who was watching B with genuine interest, seemingly having completely forgotten the cage standing right next to him. A saw his carefully controlled, high-intensity training session dissolving into utter chaos. And worse, Naruto seemed to be encouraging it. This kid's personality wasn't just compatible with B's annoying quirks, it seemed to amplify them. Enough, A bellowed, slamming his fist onto a nearby boulder, which exploded into dust. B. Leave. Naruto, focus. We are mastering the lightning release chakra mode, not preparing for a rap battle. Battle? Word. Let's drop some rhymes. Leave these mountains way behind. B suggested brightly. Naruto's eyes lit up. Yeah. We could totally do a collab. Konoha Kumo style. The Raikage put his head in his hands, letting out a long, suffering groan that echoed across the mountaintops. This alliance was going to be the death of him. 3 years. It was going to be a very, very long 3 years. A eventually lowered his hands, pinching the bridge of his nose. He looked at B, then at Naruto, who was now actually trying to mimic B's ridiculous dance moves, albeit with far less rhythm. A strategic retreat was necessary. Fine, A snapped, his voice tight with frustration. B, you think you can teach him better? Then show me. You have 10 minutes to impart your wisdom. Then you leave. Understood? Killer B beamed, striking a pose. 10 minutes is all I need, bro. Time to plant the lightning seed. Watch and learn, the B will show how to make that chakra flow. B turned to Naruto, his playful demeanor shifting slightly, becoming more focused, though the ever-present rhythm remained. Alright, kid, listen close, forget the power, feel the ghost. Lightning ain't something you command, gotta hold it gentle in your hand. Like music, yeah, feel the beat, let that energy move your feet. He demonstrated, his own body erupting in a controlled, intense blue aura, but it wasn't wild like eyes. It pulsed, rhythmic and steady, like a bass line. Don't force it hard, let it hum, for you know it, victories come. Naruto watched intently, his analytical mind processing B's words and movements. Forget the power. Feel the ghost. Like music. It clicked. A was trying to teach him to control the lightning, to contain it like a weapon. B was suggesting he harmonize with it, let it flow through him, become part of its rhythm. He closed his eyes, ignoring I's impatient glare. He reached for his lightning chakra, but instead of trying to force it into the armor shape, he let it surge, focusing not on containing it, but on feeling its natural pulse, its chaotic energy. Then, slowly, carefully, he began to guide it, not with force, but with gentle nudges, aligning its chaotic rhythm with the steady beat of his own chakra, his own heartbeat. Blue sparks began to dance around him, calmer this time, less erratic. The sputtering faded, replaced by a low, steady hum. The crackling smoothed out, forming a thin, stable, but undeniably present layer of lightning chakra that coated his entire body. It wasn't as intense as I's, not yet, but it was stable. Naruto opened his eyes, looking down at his sparking hands with a grin. Whoa! A stared, his jaw slack. He had been drilling the boy for hours with minimal progress. And B, with his nonsensical rapping and dancing, had achieved a breakthrough in under 10 minutes. B gave Naruto another fist bump. Yeah. You got the feel. Now you know the lightnin's real. Practice that flow, day by day, soon you'll blow 'em all away. He shot a smug look at his brother. Told ya, bro. The B knows best. Put your stiff methods to the rest. Before A could retort, B vanished in a cloud of smoke and ink, leaving behind only the echo of his laughter. A looked at Naruto, who was now practicing maintaining the humming aura, a look of intense concentration mixed with burgeoning excitement on his face. The Raikage let out another long sigh, but this time, it held a grudging respect. Maybe. Just maybe. B's madness had a method after all. Weeks turned into months. Naruto's training under A was relentless. He mastered the lightning release chakra mode, his speed reaching levels that began to rival the Raikage's own. He sparred daily with Kumo's elite jonin, learning their kenjutsu styles, their tactics. He pushed himself, driven by I's demanding standards and his own internal fire. But his time wasn't solely spent on the storm-racked peaks. He explored Kumagakure, getting to know its people, its culture. He ate at local restaurants, learned their unique dialect, much to Samui's occasional embarrassment, and even attended a few village festivals. His closest bond, inevitably, was with Killer B. Whenever A wasn't drilling him, Naruto would often seek out the eccentric Jinchuriki. They sparred, B teaching him the unorthodox seven-sword style, a chaotic dance of blades that Naruto found both baffling and exhilarating. They collaborated on increasingly terrible rap songs, much to the amusement of the villagers and the eternal frustration of the Raikage. More importantly, they talked, Jinchuriki to Jinchuriki. B, beneath the rhymes and bravado, possessed a deep well of wisdom about controlling a tailed beast, about finding balance and acceptance. One evening, They were sitting on one of the highest suspension bridges, watching the sunset paint the clouds in vibrant colors. B was scribbling in his rhyme book, while Naruto was idly skipping stones across the vast chasm below. "You know," Naruto said casually, watching a stone disappear into the mist. "My mom and I traveled a bit before the Chunin exams." "Oh yeah? See the world, that's smart. Gotta know your counterpart." B rhymed without looking up. "Yeah," Naruto continued, a mischievous glint entering his eyes. "We passed through Kumo, actually. Didn't stay long. Just long enough to appreciate the local music scene." B finally looked up, intrigued. "Word? You dig my beats, that's cool. Droppin' knowledge in the school." Naruto grinned. "Well, it wasn't exactly your music we heard. It was more like a cover version. Performed by someone pretty high up. Had the whole village dancing, apparently." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "Even had some fancy light show and pink glitter involved." B froze. His sunglasses slid down his nose. He stared at Naruto, the pieces clicking into place in his mind. The village-wide concert. The Raikage's inexplicable, auto-tuned rapping. The sparkling pink mustache that had mysteriously appeared in every reflection for a week. B's eyes went wide. Then, a low chuckle started deep in his chest. It grew louder, rumbling, until it exploded into a full-blown, uproarious belly laugh that echoed through the mountains. He doubled over, tears streaming from behind his shades, slapping his knee. "No way. Oh man, that's gold. A story that must be told." He howled between gasps of laughter. "The Crimson Phantoms. That was you? Bro's gonna blow a fuse or two." He laughed even harder, nearly falling off the bridge. "Pink mustache. Ha! I knew it. You're a legend, kid, admit." Naruto just leaned back, watching B's reaction with immense satisfaction. Sharing the secret felt good. Finding someone who appreciated the sheer, chaotic genius of their pranks felt even better. A might be his teacher in speed and power, but B understood his soul. A year passed in the demanding environment of Kumagakure. Naruto thrived under Ai's relentless tutelage, his lightning-release chakra mode becoming as natural as breathing, his speed pushing the boundaries of what even the Raikage thought possible. He sparred daily with B, absorbing the Jinchuriki's unorthodox kenjutsu and effortless Baijuu control. He went on missions with Kumo teams, earning the respect of the Cloud Shinobi through sheer competence and an unexpected level of tactical acumen. His relationships with Samui and Yugito deepened, evolving into complex friendships built on mutual respect, shared training, and navigating the unique pressures of their lives. He missed Konoha. He missed his friends. Most of all, he missed his mother. They exchanged letters frequently, detailed reports disguised as casual correspondence, but it wasn't the same. This was the longest he had ever been away from her, and the separation was a constant, dull ache beneath the surface of his demanding new life. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling session practicing the lariat with A, Naruto was summoned to the Raikage's office. He entered, sweat still dripping from his brow, to find A sitting behind his desk, looking unusually contemplative. "Naruto," A began, his voice lacking its usual booming intensity. "It has been a year. Your progress has been satisfactory." Coming from A, that was high praise. "I have been in regular correspondence with Hokage-sama and your mother." Naruto straightened up, his attention fully captured. "The initial stages are complete," A continued. "The terms regarding the reconstruction of Uzushio Gakure have been finalized. Preliminary surveys have been conducted, resources allocated. It is time for the work to begin." He steepled his fingers, meeting Naruto's gaze. "I am assigning you your first official mission under Kumagakure command. You will lead an escort team back to Uzushio." Naruto blinked, surprised. "To Uzu? Now?" "Yes," A confirmed. "Your mother will be arriving there shortly with her own delegation from Konoha, including the primary contractors she has selected for the project. Your mission is threefold: ensure the safe arrival of the Konoha delegation at the Uzushio perimeter. Liaise with your mother regarding the initial stages of reconstruction. Your input, as Uzumaki heir, is required. And," A paused, a rare, almost fatherly look in his eyes, "it has been a year. You need to see your mother." A wide, uncontrollable grin split Naruto's face. He could see Kushina again. Go back to Uzu, the place where his training truly began. Be part of rebuilding his homeland. "Who's on the team?" he asked, buzzing with anticipation. "Standard procedure for a mission involving high-value personnel and sensitive diplomatic relations," A stated, though a knowing glint suggested he was well aware of the underlying implications. You will be accompanied by Yugito ni and Samui Amai. Naruto just chuckled, shaking his head. Still playing matchmaker, old man. Understood, Raikage-sama. When do we leave? Tomorrow at dawn, A replied. Your mother's team is already en route. She has assembled quite the group, according to her last message. He picked up a scroll. Kakashi Hatake, Jiraiya of the Sannin. He paused, raising an eyebrow. And Mikoto Uchiha? Naruto blinked, surprised. Mikoto Basan? But she retired years ago. Apparently, A grunted, reading from the scroll. Kushina insisted her best friend and emotional support civilian be present for this momentous occasion. Troublesome woman. He tossed the scroll aside. She has also contracted the builders from the Land of Waves, led by that master bridge builder, Tazuna. Claims their expertise in coastal construction is unparalleled, and it provides a significant economic boon to a struggling nation allied with Konoha. A shrewd move. Naruto's excitement grew. Kakashi-sensei, Pervy Sage, Mikoto Basan. And Tazuna's crew rebuilding Uzu? It felt like pieces of his past and future were converging. Be ready, Naruto, A said, his tone becoming serious again. This is not just a reunion. It is the first step in fulfilling our agreement. Represent Kumagakure well. Hi, Raikage-sama. Naruto replied, snapping a crisp salute before practically vibrating out of the office, his mind already racing towards the land of whirlpools, towards home, towards his mother. The year had been challenging, transformative, but the thought of seeing Kushina again filled a void he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Dawn broke cold and clear over Kumagakure. Naruto stood at the village gates, his pack secured, feeling a thrill of anticipation that outweighed even the pre-dawn chill. Beside him stood Yugito and Samui, their expressions composed and professional, ready for the mission. A saw them off personally, a rare gesture that underscored the importance of this assignment. Remember your duty, Naruto, A said, his voice a low rumble. Represent Kumo well. And, he added, a fraction softer, try not to start any international incidents on the way. Naruto just grinned. No promises, Raikage-sama. With a final nod, they leapt from the cloud-shrouded peaks, descending towards the winding paths that led away from the land of lightning. Naruto took the lead, his senses automatically expanding, scanning their surroundings for any potential threats. He moved with a confident, easy speed, born from a year under Ai's relentless training and his own innate talent. Yugito matched his pace effortlessly, her movements fluid and predatory, while Samui kept pace with disciplined precision, her eyes constantly analyzing the terrain. The journey was long, taking them through rugged mountain passes, dense forests, and finally, towards the coast. The dynamic between the three shinobi evolved along the way. Naruto, despite being the youngest, naturally assumed the role of mission leader, his tactical awareness and decisive commands earning Samui's grudging professional respect. His easy confidence and occasional flashes of humor slowly chipped away at her reserve, leading to brief, surprisingly normal conversations about training, food, and the sheer absurdity of Killer Bee's rapping. With Yugito, the connection was different. They sparred during rest stops, not just physically, but comparing notes on controlling their Baijuu, sharing insights and frustrations that only another Jinchuriki could truly understand. A fierce, friendly rivalry developed, punctuated by shared laughter and a deep, unspoken understanding of the burdens they carried. Your control over the Kyūbi's chakra is remarkable, Yugito commented one evening as they sat by a campfire, watching Naruto effortlessly form complex shapes with Kurama's golden energy. You make it seem so calm. Naruto shrugged, the golden chakra receding. Kurama's mostly just grumpy, not evil. Took a while, but we figured things out. He looked at her, sensing the tightly controlled power of Matatabi within her. How about you? The two-tail seems intense. Yugito smiled, a rare, genuine expression. Matatabi has her own fire. But we have an understanding. As they neared the coast, the air grew thick with salt, and the familiar, chaotic roar of the whirlpools surrounding Uzushio reached their ears. Naruto guided them along the hidden paths his mother had shown him years ago. The natural defenses are formidable, Samui observed, her analytical gaze assessing the churning waters. Breaking through this would require significant power or precise knowledge. Or Uzumaki blood, Naruto said, a hint of pride in his voice. He led them to a hidden cove where a small, sturdy boat was moored, left there years ago and maintained by Kushina's long-lasting preservation seals. He channeled his chakra into the water, feeling the familiar currents, the secret pathways through the maelstrom. Just as they were about to board, Naruto paused, his head tilting. They're here. His enhanced senses picked up 4 distinct chakra signatures approaching rapidly from the east, one massive and familiar like a raging storm, Jiraiya, one sharp and precise like lightning, Kakashi, one warm and vast like the sun, Kushina, and one small, gentle, and surprisingly steady, Mikoto. He looked out across the turbulent water, and a wide, heartfelt grin spread across his face. He hadn't realized just how much he'd missed her until this moment. The Konoha boat appeared through the mists, navigating the whirlpools with Jiraiya's expertise guiding them. As it docked beside theirs, Naruto leapt across before it even settled. Ka-chan. Kushina turned, her eyes widening, and before anyone could react, Naruto crashed into her, enveloping her in a hug so tight it lifted her off her feet. All the shinobi training, the cage-level power, the cool confidence melted away in an instant, leaving only a 14-year-old boy overjoyed to see his mother after a year apart. Kushina laughed, a bright, tearful sound, hugging him back just as fiercely. Sochi. Look at you. You got taller. She pulled back, holding him at arm's length, her eyes drinking him in, checking him over with a mother's critical gaze before pulling him back into another crushing embrace. I missed you, you know. Missed you too, Naruto mumbled into her shoulder. Jiraiya chuckled heartily. Still a mama's boy, eh, Gaki? Kakashi offered a one-eyed smile. It's good to see you, Naruto. Mikoto Uchiha stepped forward, her gentle eyes full of warmth. You've grown, Naruto-kun. You look so much like your father. Naruto finally released his mother, a slight blush on his cheeks, and turned to greet the others. He exchanged a fist bump with Jiraiya and a nod with Kakashi. He gave Mikoto a respectful hug. Mikoto-san, it's great to see you. But what are you doing here? Kushina insisted, Mikoto said with a serene smile. Someone needs to keep these shinobi in line. Only then did the two groups formally acknowledge each other. Naruto quickly introduced Yugito and Samui, who offered polite, professional greetings to the legendary Sannin and the copy ninja. There was a brief, awkward moment as Jiraiya's eyes lingered a little too long on the Kumo Kunoichi, earning him a sharp, warning glare from Kushina that made him instantly straighten up. Introductions later, Kushina declared, clapping her hands together, her focus shifting instantly to the task ahead. She looked towards the misty, ruined island looming before them. We have a home to rebuild. Navigating the treacherous whirlpools was thankfully easy with the guidance of Kushina. Once through the natural barrier, the silence of the ruined island settled upon them all, a stark contrast to the lively energy of the shinobi gathered. As they stepped onto the cracked stone docks, the scale of the devastation struck Yugito and Samui. Crumbling towers, rubble-choked streets, buildings reclaimed by nature, it was a ghost of a village. Mikoto gasped softly, her hand going to her mouth, while Kakashi surveyed the scene with a grim, analytical eye. Jiraiya's usual boisterousness was subdued, replaced by a somber respect for the fallen clan. It's bigger than the reports suggested, Samui murmured, her voice losing its usual cool detachment. It was home, Kushina said softly, her gaze sweeping across the ruins with a mixture of sorrow and fierce determination. And it will be again. Just as the weight of the past threatened to settle too heavily, another fleet of sturdy, wave-worn boats arrived, skillfully navigating the calmer waters near the island. Tazuna stood at the prow of the lead boat, his face weathered but resolute, surrounded by dozens of experienced builders from the land of waves. All right, you landlubbers, Tazuna bellowed, his voice echoing across the quiet docks. We've got a village to build. Let's get to work. The arrival of the builders injected a new energy into the desolate island. Plans were unrolled, supplies were unloaded, and the rhythmic sound of hammers and saws soon began to replace the mournful whisper of the wind. Naruto watched them work, a sense of purpose solidifying within him. He turned to Kushina. They'll need help clearing the heavier rubble, securing foundations. He made a familiar hand sign. Shadow clone jutsu. 200 clones popped into existence, awaiting orders. All right, guys, Naruto commanded. You heard the man. Let's get this place cleaned up. Follow Tazuna-san's instructions. The clones gave a collective cheer and swarmed into the ruins, providing an instant, tireless workforce that left Tazuna and his crew staring in astonishment before breaking into grateful grins. With the initial reconstruction efforts underway, guided by Kushina and Tazuna, Naruto took the opportunity to show Yugito and Samui around his ancestral home. He led them through the overgrown streets, pointing out the remnants of the marketplace, the academy, the training grounds where he himself had spent years honing his skills. He spoke of the Uzumaki clan's history, their mastery of Fuinjutsu, their fierce loyalty, and their tragic end. He deliberately avoided the hidden entrance to the Great Sealing Vault, some secrets were family only. As they walked, the professional distance between them began to blur. Samui, intrigued by the intricate, half-destroyed seal arrays carved into some of the remaining walls, asked Naruto detailed questions about Fuinjutsu theory, leading to an unexpectedly engaging technical discussion. Yugito, sensing the lingering echoes of the past, shared stories of Kumo's own history, finding common ground in the burdens carried by shinobi villages. Naruto found himself relaxing, laughing, sharing stories of his training here, the Kumo Kunoichi seeing a different side of him, not just the powerhouse, but the boy connected to this place. They stopped on the cliffs overlooking the sea, the same spot where Kushina had first taught him sensory techniques. The sun was setting, painting the sky and the churning whirlpools in hues of orange and gold. "It's beautiful," Yugito said softly, the fierce Jinchuriki momentarily subdued by the scene. "Yeah," Naruto agreed, a nostalgic smile on his face. "It will be again." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the waves crash against the ruined foundations of his ancestors' home. The weight of history and the promise of the future mingled in the salty air. Later that evening, after dinner, Naruto was walking through the makeshift camp set up near the docks, checking on the progress his clones had made clearing a large section of rubble. Most of the others had turned in, exhausted from the travel and the first day's work. "Making good progress, Gaki?" Naruto turned to see Jiraiya leaning against a half-crumbled wall, a familiar, lecherous grin on his face. "Yeah, the clones are efficient," Naruto replied, eyeing his godfather warily. "What do you want, pervy sage?" Jiraiya sauntered over, slinging an arm around Naruto's shoulders. "Just checking on my favorite godson. Noticed you spending a lot of time with those Kumo Kunoichi today. Can't say I blame you. Kumo certainly knows how to raise 'em." He winked. "So? Gotten lucky yet?" Naruto sighed, disentangling himself from Jiraiya's grasp. "We were discussing the mission and Uzumaki history." His fist shot out, crackling with a barely contained surge of blue lightning chakra, connecting squarely with Jiraiya's gut. The Sannin let out a surprised oof. As he was launched backwards, crashing through a pile of debris before embedding himself comically in a stack of lumber. Naruto retracted his sparking fist, taking a deep breath. "And stop being a pervert. It's embarrassing." A moment later, Jiraiya nonchalantly pulled himself out of the wreckage, rubbing his stomach with a groan, though his lecherous grin remained intact. "Feisty. Just like your old man." He ambled back over, seemingly unfazed. "Still," he persisted, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "a man's gotta have preferences, right? After a year up close, you must have a favorite by now. If you're anything like your godfather," he puffed out his chest proudly, "you'll fall for the big-chested one." He gestured vaguely in the direction of the temporary barracks. Naruto just stared at him, utterly bewildered by the comment, his mind genuinely not processing the implication. He looked from Jiraiya's grinning face towards the barracks and back, pure confusion written on his features. "What are you talking about?" Jiraiya just chuckled, shaking his head. "Ah, youth. Still so pure. Don't worry about it, Gaki." He clapped Naruto on the shoulder. "You'll see." With another wink, he sauntered off towards his own tent, leaving Naruto completely perplexed under the moonlight. The following 3 weeks on Uzushio passed in a blur of activity, a strange but harmonious blend of diligent reconstruction, shared memories, and nascent friendships. Naruto's shadow clones proved invaluable, their tireless labor accelerating Tazuna's ambitious rebuilding schedule. Foundations were laid, collapsed walls were cleared, and the skeletal outlines of new buildings began to rise from the ruins, infused with the hope of a reborn homeland. During breaks from overseeing the clones and liaising with Tazuna, Naruto continued to explore the island with Yugito and Samui. The shared mission and the unique, isolated environment fostered a camaraderie that went beyond their Kumo Konoha affiliations. With Samui, Naruto had an intellectual sparring partner. They would spend hours examining the remnants of Uzumaki's seal arrays, Naruto explaining the complex theories his mother had taught him, while Samui offered insights from Kumo's own Fuinjutsu traditions, telling him about the tools of the Sage of Six Paths. Their debates were often sharp and technical, but underscored by a growing mutual respect for each other's keen minds. With Yugito, the connection was more instinctual. They trained together on the cliffs overlooking the sea, pushing each other's taijutsu and baijuu control. Yugito shared techniques for harmonizing with Matatabi, while Naruto demonstrated Kurama's unique applications of chakra. Away from the pressures of Kumo, Yugito's guarded exterior softened, revealing a dry wit and a fierce loyalty that Naruto found himself increasingly drawn to. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a bond forged in the shared fire of being Jinchuriki. Evenings were often spent together, Naruto, Yugito, and Samui, sometimes joined by Kakashi or even Jiraiya, when he wasn't researching the female builders, sharing stories around the large communal campfire Tazuna's crew had built. They spoke of their villages, their training, their dreams. Naruto found himself opening up, sharing tales of his pranks with Kushina and his determination to become Hokage, which he had inherited from his mother. In turn, he learned about Samui's dedication to her duty and Yugito's quiet strength in the face of Kumo's sometimes harsh expectations of her as their Jinchuriki. He also made sure to spend precious time with his mother. They would walk along the beaches at dawn, watching the whirlpools churn, Kushina sharing more stories of her childhood here, pointing out places where she played, trained, and dreamed. Seeing the foundations of her home rising again filled her with a profound, quiet joy that Naruto hadn't seen before. "It feels real now, Sochi," she said one morning, watching Tazuna direct the placement of a massive stone archway. "Like it's not just a ghost anymore. We'll make it better than before, Ka-chan," Naruto promised, feeling the weight of his clan's legacy settle comfortably on his shoulders. During one of their walks, he asked, "How did it go? With Gaara and his siblings?" Kushina smiled, a genuine expression of relief and satisfaction. "Better than I could have hoped. The seal. It was a deliberate nightmare, designed by their father to keep Gaara unstable. But Uzumaki Fuinjutsu is made for situations like this." She tapped her own stomach lightly. "I managed to completely restructure and stabilize it. Reinforce the core matrix, add dampeners." The poor kid slept for 3 days straight afterwards. First real sleep he's likely had in his life. Naruto felt a wave of relief. "So he's okay?" "He's stable," Kushina confirmed. "And grateful, in his own quiet way. Tamari and Kankuro too. They understand the truth about their father now. We sent them back to Suna last week under Anbu escort. With the Kazekage gone, Suna is in political turmoil, but Hiruzen is already working on establishing new ties, building a potential alliance now that Orochimaru's influence is removed. Gaara being stable is the key to that peace." Naruto nodded, absorbing the news. A potential ally in Suna, led by a stable Gaara. The political implications were significant. One afternoon, seeking more news from home, Naruto found Kakashi near the edge of the construction zone, reading his ever-present book. "Kakashi-sensei," Naruto greeted. Kakashi looked up, offering his usual one-eyed smile. "Naruto. Taking a break?" "Something like that. I was wondering. How are the others doing? Sakura? Sai?" He hesitated slightly. "Sasuke?" Kakashi closed his book. "They're progressing well. Sakura is excelling in her medical ninjutsu training at the hospital, showing real talent. Sai is integrating, finding his place within the team dynamic." Kakashi's visible eye gained a thoughtful look. As for Sasuke, Itachi's training seems to have had a profound effect. He's more focused, more driven than ever. Quieter, perhaps. He pushes himself relentlessly. Naruto felt a sense of relief mixed with a familiar pang of rivalry. "That's good. I'm glad." Finally, after 3 weeks of diligent work and unexpected bonding, the time came for the Kumo delegation to return. The initial phase of reconstruction was well underway, framework stood where ruins had been, and a tangible sense of progress filled the air. At the docks, the farewells were directed at the Konoha contingent remaining behind. Kushina had decided that she, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Mikado would stay on Uzushio for the time being, overseeing the next stage of construction and ensuring the site remained secure. Naruto turned first to Kakashi and Jiraiya. "Keep an eye on Mom for me, alright? Make sure she doesn't try to rebuild the whole island by herself in a week." Kakashi gave a noncommittal eye smile. "We'll do our best." Jiraiya just laughed. "Don't worry, Gaki. We'll keep her plenty busy." He gave Mikoto a respectful nod. "Take care, Mikoto-san. You too, Naruto-kun. Be safe." Finally, he turned to his mother. The playful banter faded. The familiar ache of separation returned. Kushina pulled him into a tight hug. 2 years isn't forever, Sochi. Learn everything you can. Get stronger. Uzu will be waiting for you. I'll be back before you know it, he promised, hugging her fiercely before letting go. With final nods to the Konoha team and a wave to Tazuna and his crew, Naruto leapt into the Kumo boat alongside Yugito and Samui. As they navigated back through the whirlpools, Naruto took one last look at the island, at the figures waving from the shore, at the rising structures that symbolized his clan's future. He was leaving one home to return to another, his path clearer, his resolve stronger than ever. Far away, on a desolate, windswept mountain peak overlooking the stone fortress of Iwagakure, the air shimmered. A figure swirled into existence, clad in a black cloak adorned with red clouds. An orange mask with a single eyehole stared impassively at the village below. Toby had arrived. Beneath the mask, a predatory grin stretched across scarred features. The old fence-sitter. Still clinging to his rock. It's time to shake things up. With another swirl of distorted space, Toby vanished from the peak. Inside the Tsuchikage's office, Aniki was hunched over a map, grumbling about territorial disputes with Kumo. Suddenly, the air beside his desk warped, and Toby materialized, standing casually with his arms folded. Aniki shot upright, despite his aching back, instantly on high alert. Chakra flared around his diminutive form. What is this intrusion? He snapped, recognizing the cloak. Akatsuki. You dare trespass here? You are overstepping your ground. Toby simply chuckled, the sound muffled and distorted by his mask. Settle down, Aniki. I haven't come to fight. He tilted his head, the single dark eyehole seeming to pierce the Tsuchikage's defenses. We have much to discuss. About the future. And the Jinchuriki. The air in the office grew heavy, the weight of unspoken threats settling between the ancient cage and the masked enigma. Meanwhile, back in Konoha, the Hokage's office hosted a different kind of tense meeting. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind his desk, calmly puffing on his pipe, facing two figures who bore the unmistakable air of Kirigakure. One was Zabuza Momochi, looking deeply uncomfortable in the formal setting, his bandaged face conveying a grudging respect rather than his usual killing intent. The other was a stunningly beautiful woman with long, auburn hair styled to cover one eye, clad in a high-collared blue dress. Her gentle smile did little to hide the sharp intelligence and underlying power in her green eyes. Mei Terumi, the de facto leader of the Kirigakure rebellion. Hokage Dono, Mei began, her voice smooth and diplomatic, though laced with urgency. We came at Zabuza-san's insistence. He spoke highly of Kushina Uzumaki's intervention. During his time employed by Gato. He believed she, or perhaps her son, might be sympathetic to our cause. Zabuza grunted. The red-hot habanero offered me a new contract, fight for my own damn village. Figured maybe she'd extend the same courtesy to the rebellion itself. Mei continued, Kirigakure suffers under Yagura's reign. The bloodline purges continue, the civil war drains our strength. We seek allies, Hokage Dono. Resources, support. Perhaps even intervention. Her gaze was direct. Zabuza believed the Uzumaki, given their history with Kiri, might be inclined to help. Hiruzen took a slow draw from his pipe, considering his words carefully. Your plight is known to us, Terumi Dono. Konoha desires peace and stability in all nations. However, he sighed. Regarding Naruto Namikaze, the situation is complex. As part of a new, crucial alliance agreement with Kumagakure, he is currently residing there, training under the Raikage's direct command for a few years. He is operating under Kumo's authority, not Konoha's, for the duration. Mei's expression tightened slightly. Zabuza frowned. I can offer diplomatic channels, Hiruzen continued. I can express Konoha's interest in a resolution to your conflict when I next communicate with the Raikage. Put in a good word, perhaps encourage Kumo's potential support. But direct intervention from Naruto is unlikely at this time. And Kushina-sama? Zabuza asked, cutting straight to the point. She's the one who understood. Hiruzen's expression became carefully neutral. Kushina Uzumaki is currently away on a long-term, classified mission of utmost importance to Konoha and her clan. She is overseeing a project. Something deeply dear to her heart. He met their gazes firmly. She is unreachable and will be for the foreseeable future. I cannot share any further details at this time. Mei processed the information, her diplomatic mind assessing the situation. Naruto was tied to Kumo. Kushina was off the board. Konoha offered sympathy but no direct aid. It wasn't the answer she had hoped for, but it wasn't a complete refusal either. Thank you for your candor, Hokage Dono, Mei said, rising gracefully. We appreciate Konoha's position. We will consider our next steps. As they were escorted out, Zabuza glanced back at the Hokage tower, a thoughtful, almost frustrated look on his face. The Uzumakis were proving just as unpredictable and complicated as ever. The air in the Tsuchikage's office was heavy and cold, the weight of unspoken threats settling between the ancient cage and the masked enigma. Aniki's chakra flared, his particle-style jutsu ready to disintegrate the intruder at a moment's notice. The Jinchuriki? Aniki scoffed, his voice a low growl. What business does the Akatsuki have with them? Or with Iwa? Toby chuckled, a sound that grated on the Tsuchikage's nerves. My, Aniki. So aggressive. We are merely collectors. We seek to bring peace to this chaotic world, a lasting peace that Kages like you have always failed to achieve. He tilted his head. We are gathering the Baijuu. Your 4 tails and 5 tails will, in time, be part of this grand design. Anaki's eyes narrowed. You openly declare your intention to attack my village? You are either a fool or dangerously powerful. Neither, Toby replied, his voice dropping to a serious, almost reasonable tone. I am simply a realist. And I am here to offer you a perspective. He gestured vaguely to the southeast. Konoha and Kumo are strengthening their bonds. Did you know? The 9 tails Jinchuriki, Naruto Namikaze, is currently in Kumagakure, training under the Raikage himself. An alliance is being forged, sealed by the Leaf's greatest weapon. Anaki's expression tightened. He had not known. The Raikage, his greatest rival, gaining access to Minato's legacy. This was a dangerous shift in the balance of power. They build alliances, Toby continued, while Iwa sits on its rock, isolated. Stubborn. Konoha and Kumo grow stronger, their Jinchuriki united. Where does that leave you, Tsuchikage? Iwa bows to no one, Anaki spat. Of course not, Toby agreed, his voice dripping with false sincerity. But a wise Kage knows when to stay his hand. The Akatsuki's goals do not concern Iwa. Yet. All we ask is that you continue to be the fence sitter you have always been. When the time comes for us to collect your assets, a village weakened by pointless squabbles with its neighbors would be so much easier to deal with. He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. Or, perhaps, you might find it beneficial to direct your attention elsewhere. At Kumo, for instance. Anaki stared, his mind racing. The Akatsuki was making a move, and they were trying to manipulate him into a conflict with Kumo, or at least ensure his neutrality. They were a threat, but Toby was right, an alliance between Konoha and Kumo was a far more immediate danger to Iwa's strategic position. Your perspective has been noted, Anaki said finally, his voice a low growl. I'm so glad we had this chat, Toby chirped, his persona shifting back to being flippant. He began to shimmer, his form distorting. Don't bother seeing me out. We'll be in touch. With a final, mocking wave, he swirled out of existence, leaving that Tsuchikage alone in his office, a cold fury burning in his eyes. The world was changing, and he had to decide which way Iwa would lean. Meanwhile, Naruto, Yugito, and Samui arrived back in Kumagakure, their mission to Uzushio a success. They reported directly to the Raikage, detailing the meeting with the Konoha delegation and the successful start of the Reconstruction. Excellent, A grunted, pleased with the report. Your mother's terms were aggressive, but Kumo keeps its word. The resources are being allocated as we speak. He looked at Naruto, a flicker of approval in his eyes. You have performed your first mission for this village flawlessly. You are dismissed. As they left the office, Samui nodded to Naruto. Your Fuinjutsu knowledge was impressive. I have some theories on barrier stabilization I would like to discuss with you, if you have the time. Sure, Naruto agreed. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. She gave a curt, professional bow and walked away. Yugito fell into step beside Naruto as they walked towards their respective quarters. She likes you, the Jinchuriki noted, a faint, teasing smirk on her face. She likes my Fuinjutsu, Naruto corrected, rolling his eyes. Perhaps. Yugito's smile faded slightly. You did well on the island. It was good to see your home. Or what's left of it. It'll be home again, Naruto said with quiet confidence. They stopped at the junction that led to their quarters. That's not what I meant, Yugito said, her cat-like eyes meeting his. It was good to see you there. You were different. More at peace. More like yourself than the Konoha weapon Kumo has been training. Naruto was taken aback by her sudden perceptiveness. He just looked at her, unsure how to respond. She gave him that same, faint smile. Get some rest, Naruto. The Raikage won't go easy on you just because you're back. She turned and walked away, her movements as fluid and silent as the Baijuu she contained, leaving Naruto to ponder her words as he headed for his own quarters. The lines between duty, friendship, and something more complicated were beginning to blur. Chapter 7. Naruto's return to the grueling training regimen under A was immediate. The brief respite on Uzushio, filled with the warmth of family and the promise of his clan's future, had only sharpened his focus. He attacked the Raikage's drills with a renewed vigor, his speed now a blistering fusion of his father's raw talent, his own Fuinjutsu enhancements, and Ai's lightning-based ferocity. His relationships with Yugito and Samui also settled into a comfortable, productive rhythm, Samui as his intellectual sparring partner in tactics and theory, and Yugito as his Baijuu confidant and high-level combat partner. The three of them had become Kumo's most formidable and talked-about trio, an odd but effective combination of Konoha's prodigy and two of Kumo's finest Kunoichi. It was for this reason that, 2 months after their return from Uzushio, all three were summoned to the Raikage's office. They entered to find A massaging his temples, a look of profound, personal annoyance on his face. "We have a problem," A grunted, not bothering with pleasantries. He tossed a stack of reports onto his desk. "A woman. She's been drifting through the gambling towns on our southern border. In the last month, she's left a trail of destruction, damaged 3 major casinos, and broken the arms of at least 30 loan sharks who tried to collect on her." Samui raised an eyebrow. "Sir? This sounds like a simple law enforcement issue." "Why's?" "Because," A said through gritted teeth, "the reports state she shatters building foundations with a single, chakra-enhanced punch. And her description is familiar." He looked at Naruto. "Blonde. Enormous. Strength. And a legendary gambling addiction. Sound like anyone your perverted godfather might have told you about?" Naruto's eyes widened, a look of dawning, horrified comprehension on his face. "You're kidding. You don't mean?" "Tsunade of the Sannin," A confirmed, his voice a low growl. "You're Hokage's old student. She's supposed to be in Konoha's sphere of influence, but she's decided to bring her unique brand of chaos to my country." Yugito and Samui exchanged a look, now understanding the gravity of the situation. A legendary Sannin on a destructive gambling binge was not a law enforcement issue, it was a potential S-rank diplomatic incident. "I want this handled quickly and quietly," A commanded. "Your mission is to go to the town of Shizuku-gai, her last known location, and contain her. Do not engage in a direct fight. I want you to assess the situation, mitigate the damage, and get her out of my territory. Use diplomacy, use trickery, use whatever you have to, but do not pick a fight with her. Understood?" "Hi, Raikage-sama," the three said in unison. As they left, Naruto couldn't help but chuckle. "Tsunade. Jiraiya's crazy teammate. This is going to be a nightmare." The day after Naruto's team departed, a Kumo guard burst into the Raikage's office, out of breath. "Sir. A delegation has arrived at the gates. There. From Kirigakure." A looked up from his work, his expression unreadable. "And?" "They are led by Mei Terumi. And Zabuza Momochi. They carry a formal request for an audience, vouched for by the third Hokage." "Humph." A leaned back in his chair. Sarutobi's message, which had arrived a week prior, had warned him this might happen. The Kiri rebellion, emboldened by Zabuza's new purpose and funding, was looking for powerful allies. "Let them in," A commanded. "Escort them to the diplomatic quarters. See to their comfort, but double the guard. Zabuza may be vouched for, but he still was once a missing nin." Later that day, A met with the Kiri delegation. Mei Terumi made her case with eloquence and passion, detailing Yagura's tyranny and the desperate need for outside intervention to end the civil war. Zabuza stood by her side, a silent, menacing testament to the rebellion's newfound strength. When she finished, A steepled his fingers, his expression thoughtful. "Your plight is compelling, Terumi Dono. An unstable Kiri is a threat to the balance of all nations. However, a direct intervention from Kumagakure is a declaration of war. That is not a decision to be made lightly." "We understand," Mei said, her voice steady. "But Konoha's Jinchuriki, Naruto Uzumaki, has already aided our cause by setting Zabuza on this path. We had hoped Kumo, as his current host, might share his sympathies." "Humph. The brat's sympathies are his own," A grunted. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I must deliberate with my council. Enjoy Kumagakure's hospitality for a few days. I will give you my answer when I am ready." As the Kiri delegation was escorted out, Ai's aide, Daru, looked at him, confused. "Sir? The council can meet in an hour. Why the delay?" The Raikage walked to his window, looking out over the peaks in the direction Naruto had left. "This decision requires a unique perspective. The boy has a sharp political mind and a direct connection to this Zabuza. I will not commit Kumo's forces to a war in the mist until I have his assessment." He turned back to Daru. "Stall them. I need to buy my team some time to get back." 3 days later, the guards at Kumagakure's main gate scrambled to attention. A small, weary-looking group was approaching. It was the team A had dispatched, Yugito ni, Samui Amai, and Naruto Namikaze. With them, however, were 3 others. A younger woman with short black hair, nervously carrying a pig, and a blonde woman with a commanding presence who was currently arguing with Naruto about something. I'm telling you, brat, that last town's casino was definitely cheating. Their dice were weighted. The blonde woman insisted loudly. They're all cheating, Tsunade Bakken. Naruto argued back, his voice exasperated. That's the point of those places. You just have the worst luck in the world. What did you call me? The guards paled, recognizing the woman from the bingo book. They immediately sent an urgent message to the Raikage. Minutes later, Naruto's team stood in the Raikage's office. Tsunade of the Sannin stood with them, her arms crossed, looking thoroughly unimpressed by the cage's tower. Shizune stood nervously behind her. Mission successful, Raikage-sama, Samui reported, her voice the epitome of professionalism, as if she hadn't just spent 3 days listening to arguments about gambling debts. We located Tsunade-sama in Shizuku-gai, de-escalated a conflict with local creditors, and escorted her here as requested. A stared at the legendary Sannin, his expression a mixture of annoyance and grim respect. Tsunade. It's been a long time. You've caused me a significant amount of trouble. Tsunade just scoffed. Your loan sharks are soft, eh? They folded before I even had to get serious. She looked around the office. So, I'm your guest. What do you want? If this is about the money I owe this village, you can add it to my tab. This is not about your debts, A grunted, his patience already wearing thin. This is a diplomatic courtesy. You are a Konoha Sannin, and you are operating in my territory without leave. I am having you escorted back to the Land of Fire's border. But first, he looked at Yugito and Samui, you two are dismissed. Excellent work. As the Kunoichi left, Ai's gaze fell on Naruto, who was trying to look as innocent as possible. You. Stay. Tsunade and Shizune were let out by Daru, leaving Naruto alone with the Raikage. The moment the door shut, Ai's stern expression softened slightly into one of serious contemplation. You did well, brat, A said, a rare note of praise. Containing a Sannin without starting a fight. That's a high-level success. But we have a more pressing issue. He walked to the window, looking down at the diplomatic guest houses. The delegation from Kumagakure arrived while you were gone. Mei Terumi and Zabuza Momochi. They are here asking for Kumo's aid in their civil war. Naruto's expression turned serious. Zabuza kept his word. He did, A confirmed. Mei Terumi made her case. It's compelling. An unstable Kiri is a threat to us all. But a direct intervention is a declaration of war against an official Kage, tyrant or not. My counsel is divided. He turned to face Naruto, his gaze piercing. You have dealt with Zabuza. You and your mother set him on this path. And you are a Jinchuriki, like Yagura. Your perspective on this is unique. I want your assessment. What do you think? Naruto was taken aback. The Raikage wasn't just informing him, he was asking for his opinion, a genuine sign of respect that went beyond their teacher-student relationship. Naruto thought for a long moment, recalling his mother's logic, his own encounter with Zabuza, and the strategic map of the nations. We can't intervene directly, Naruto said finally. Kumo can't be seen declaring war on Kiri. It would give Iwa the perfect excuse to move, and it would destabilize everything. He met Ai's gaze. But we don't have to fight their war for them. We just have to give them the tools to win it. Tools? A asked, intrigued. Zabuza and Mei are strong, but they're insurgents. They lack resources, equipment, and intelligence. They're fighting a Kage who has an entire village's assets. We can't send an army. But we can send supplies. Weapons, medical equipment, food. We can provide untraceable funds, just like Mom and I did with Gato's money. We can give them intelligence on Yagura's shipping routes and patrols. A slow, predatory grin spread across Ai's face. Covert support. Arming the rebellion without putting a single Kumo boot on the ground. Destabilizing an enemy village while maintaining plausible deniability. He looked at Naruto, his expression one of deep, calculating approval. You're just like your mother, brat. Cunning. Devious. A stroked his chin, the gears of his strategic mind turning rapidly. Naruto's plan was good. It was safe. But it was also slow. What if there was a way to accelerate it? To add a catalyst? Your plan is sound, A said, walking back to his desk. It's the smart, long-term political move. But it's missing one key element. A force multiplier. A S-rank shinobi can't just be given intelligence and weapons. They need someone to show them how to use them on a grand scale, to coordinate the chaos. He sat down, his gaze locking with Naruto's. Zabuza and Mei are strong, but they're still just rebels. You're a force of nature. You toppled an S-rank Jinchuriki and ended an invasion in a single afternoon. Naruto's eyes narrowed, sensing where this was going. Kumo cannot officially send you, A continued, his voice a low, rumbling growl. Your presence as an agent of this village would be an act of war. But if the Kiri rebellion were to formally hire a neutral, unaffiliated mercenary for a high-stakes mission, well, that's just a private contract. A slow, mischievous grin began to spread across Naruto's face. He understood. A hired shinobi? Paid for by Mei-san? Exactly, A confirmed, his own grin matching Naruto's. He saw the fire in the boy's eyes, the same chaotic energy he'd seen from Kushina and B. It would be their mission, their coin. You would simply be the consultant they hired. It gives you complete plausible deniability. It gives me plausible deniability. The Raikage leaned forward, the facade of the stoic leader gone, replaced by the excited anticipation of a warrior. This is a chance for you to let loose, brat. To really show the world what you can do, away from the structured rules of Kumo and Konoha. Go there. Unleash some chaos. Turn the tide of their war. Show them what you've learned here. Naruto thought of his mother's Crimson Phantom tour, the sheer joy of causing mayhem for a greater good. This wasn't just a mission, it was a vacation. They'll get Kumo's covert aid, the weapons and intelligence, Naruto said, the plan forming in his mind. And I'll be the one to deliver the first shipment. A demonstration of good faith. Precisely, A boomed, slamming his hand on the desk in approval. You'll be a ghost, a rumor, operating completely outside the chain of command. But you'll have the full, secret backing of my resources. This was Ai's true plan. Not just to support the rebellion, but to unleash his greatest asset on a rival village, all while his own hands remained perfectly clean. It was a masterstroke of political maneuvering. All right, Naruto said, his grin now feral. When do I start? First, A said, his formal cage persona returning as he pressed a button on his intercom, we have to make the offer. He looked at Naruto. They're about to hire the most expensive and destructive mercenary in the world. They just don't know it yet. The door opened, and Daru entered. You called, Lord Raikage? Bring in Mei Terumi and Zabuza Momochi, A commanded. And send for Tsunade. I want a Sanin to bear witness to this. A few minutes later, the Raikage's office was filled with an almost suffocating amount of political and raw power. Mei and Zabuza stood on one side, their expressions wary and uncertain. Tsunade stood on the other, her arms crossed, her expression one of profound annoyance at being dragged into another political meeting. Shizune stood nervously behind her. A sat behind his desk, a mountain of pure authority, with Naruto standing calmly at his side. Thank you all for coming, A began, his voice a low rumble. He looked directly at Mei Terumi. Terumi Dono, I have deliberated with my counsel, and I have consulted my advisors. He gestured to Naruto, a move not lost on Mei. The official position of Kumagakure is one of non-intervention. We will not commit Kumo forces to a civil war in another land. It would be a catastrophic breach of international treaties and would invite retribution from Iwa and others. Mei's expression tightened, her shoulders slumping almost imperceptibly. This was the refusal she had feared. However, A continued, a slow, predatory grin spreading across his face, that is Kumo's official position. He leaned forward. Your rebellion's main issue, as I see it, is a lack of high-level assets and strategic resources. It's a pity you don't have the funds to hire a truly effective mercenary. A private contract, after all, is a personal business matter, not an act of war between nations. Mei's eyes, the one not covered by her hair, widened slightly. She understood the political theater instantly. Zabuza, less subtle, just grunted. Are you offering us a loan, Raikage-sama? I am offering nothing, A said, his grin widening. I am merely observing your unfortunate financial situation. He then gestured to Naruto, who had been silent this entire time. As it happens, Naruto Dono here has just completed a very difficult and lucrative mission on Kumo's behalf. He conveniently left out that the mission was dragging Tsunade here. He has been well compensated. He has also expressed to me, in private, a deep, personal sympathy for your cause. A sympathy that Kumagakure, officially, cannot share. Naruto stepped forward, picking up the cue perfectly. I'll do it, he said, his voice clear and confident. He looked directly at Mei and Zabuza. I'll go to Kiri. I'll be your consultant. Zabuza's eye widened in genuine shock. He had expected supplies, maybe a few weapons. Not him. As a show of good faith, Naruto continued, I will personally escort the first shipment of Kumo's surplus medical supplies and weapons to your rebel base. Consider that my signing bonus. You can pay me for the rest of my services later. Mei Terumi stared, her mind racing to process the sheer audacity of the offer. The most powerful Genin in the world, the hero of the Chunin exams and the son of the Yellow Flash, backed by the covert resources of Kumo, was offering to join their fight as a mercenary. It was a trump card she had never dreamed of holding. This is an incredibly generous offer, Naruto Dono, Mei said, recovering her diplomatic composure, though her voice was laced with excitement. An offer the rebellion would be foolish to refuse. Excellent, A boomed, slamming his hand on his desk. The agreement is verbal. A private contract between the Kiri rebellion and the free agent, Naruto Namikaze. He then turned his gaze to the Sannin. Tsunade. You are here as a witness. Tsunade, who had been watching this political masterstroke with a cynical, almost impressed amusement, raised an eyebrow. A witness to what? You coercing Konoha's Jinchuriki into fighting your proxy war? Of course not, A said smoothly. You are a legendary Sannin and a representative of Konoha, our ally. You are here to bear witness to the fact that Naruto Namikaze entered into this contract of his own free will, without any pressure or coercion from Kumagakure. He is acting as an independent contractor, separate from any orders from myself or the Hokage. Isn't that right, Naruto? Naruto gave a sharp, professional nod. That's exactly right. This is a personal decision. Tsunade looked from Ai's smug face to Naruto's equally confident one. She saw the setup. She saw the plausible deniability. And she saw the sheer, chaotic genius of it. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. Fine. I'll be your witness. But this is going to be the biggest mess the Mist has seen since the Third War. You know that, right, brat? That's the whole point, Tsunade Bakken, Naruto replied, his grin now feral. It's time to let loose. The final year of Naruto's time in Kumo was split between two worlds. Half of it was spent under Ai's punishing training, honing his lightning release chakra mode to a level that neared the Raikage's own, and sparring with Yugito and Samui. The other half was spent in the thick, bloody mists of the Land of Water. True to his word, Naruto became the rebellion's ghost. His contract was simple, he would act as a high-level consultant and strike force, paid for by Mei Terumi. He'd spend 2 to 3 months at a time in Kiri, a phantom of Konoha operating with Kumo's secret backing. It was not a glorious war of open battles. It was a shadowy, brutal campaign of guerrilla warfare. He sabotaged Yagura's supply lines, liberated bloodline-holding prisoners, and used his shadow clones to coordinate rebel attacks on multiple fronts. He became a rumor, a whisper of an orange and black demon that Yagura's loyalist forces could neither catch nor comprehend. But the work took its toll. Civil wars were ugly, and Naruto saw firsthand the cost of his chaos: the desperate refugees, the child soldiers, the betrayals. It was after his third tour in Kiri, with only 5 months remaining on his 3-year contract with Kumo, that the change in him became undeniable. He arrived back in Kumagakure, not with his usual boisterous energy, but with the quiet, weary tread of a veteran. Yugito and Samui met him at the gates, as had become their custom. Welcome back, Naruto, Yugito greeted, her usual teasing smile fading as she saw his eyes. Hey, he replied, his voice flat. He looked distant. The bright, sharp blue of his eyes seemed to hold shadows that hadn't been there before. He walked past them towards the Raikage's tower to debrief, his shoulders heavy. Later that evening, Yugito found Samui in one of Kumo's high-altitude training grounds, overlooking the sea of clouds. He's not himself, Yugito said, her voice low. Samui nodded, not looking up from polishing her sword. His report to Lord Raikage was concise, efficient. But he's not all there. He didn't even stop to trade rap lines with Bisama on the way in. That war is getting to him, Yugito said, her cat-like eyes narrowed with concern. He's seen too much. He's hiding it, but I can feel it. The Baijuu within us. They sense these things. He's carrying a new weight, and it's not his own. Samui finally stopped polishing, her gaze softening. He's 15, Yugito. And he's been fighting an S-rank war for almost a year, she sighed, a rare show of emotion. He needs a break. A real one. Before he burns out. Yugito nodded, a plan forming in her mind. Then we'll give him one. A week later, Naruto was summoned by Yugito and Samui for a mandatory team-building exercise, a cover story they'd cleared with A, who had also noticed his prized pupil's declining morale. They led him away from the village, to a secluded, high-altitude hot spring resort known as the Ondan, a place reserved for Kumo's most elite shinobi. A hot spring? Naruto asked, his voice still holding that weary edge. Lord Raikage's orders, Samui lied smoothly. He insists that his primary assets maintain peak physical and mental condition. This is preventative maintenance. Naruto, too tired to argue, just nodded and followed. The resort was peaceful, the air filled with the scent of sulfur and pine. They spent the week in a state of enforced relaxation. They soaked in the restorative waters, ate good food, and, for the first time in a year, didn't talk about war, training, or politics. They talked about home, about their futures, about nothing at all. Slowly, the shadows in Naruto's eyes began to recede. On their last evening, Yugito and Samui insisted he take advantage of the resort specialty. It's the four-fist chakra restoration massage, Yugito explained, pushing a reluctant Naruto towards a private room. It's a Kumo specialty. It'll completely restore your chakra flow. Go. Samui and I will wait. Naruto sighed, but relented. He entered the room. It was dark, filled with steam and the scent of calming oils. He lay face down on the massage table as instructed. Two figures entered, silent as shadows. He assumed they were the spa staff. The massage began. It was incredible. Their hands were strong, precise, and expertly targeted every knot of tension in his body. They moved with a practiced, almost synchronized grace, dismantling the deep-seated stress in his muscles. And there were 4 hands. A two-person massage? He thought groggily, already drifting into a state of pure relaxation. Guess that's why they call it four-fist style. He felt their chakra, warm and controlled, seeping into his own network, soothing the strains of the lightning release mode and the lingering taint of war. One pair of hands felt slightly warmer, more intense, almost fiery. The other was cooler, more precise, more analytical. He let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a year. The massage ended. He felt boneless, completely at peace, his mind clearer than it had been in months. That was, he mumbled into the table, amazing. Thank you. I don't know how I can. He pushed himself up and turned around, rubbing his neck. The lights in the room were slightly brighter now. And standing there, looking decidedly awkward with small towels over their shoulders and a faint blush on their faces, were Yugito and Samui. Naruto froze, his brain taking a long moment to reboot. The 4 hands. The fiery chakra. The cool, precise chakra. You. That was. You? Yugito had the decency to look slightly embarrassed, though her gaze was still defiant. You were a wreck. We had to do something. Samui just crossed her arms, though her professional mask was cracking. It is a valid chakra restoration technique. The hands-on application is simply the most efficient method. Naruto stared at them, at the genuine, undeniable care in their expressions. They had seen he was breaking and had, in their own, slightly awkward shinobi way, put him back together. He wasn't just a political ally or a training partner to them. He was a friend. A slow, genuine smile, the first real one they had seen in weeks, spread across his face. Thank you, he said, his voice quiet and heartfelt. Both of you. I really needed that. The professional lines had just been irrevocably blurred. And as the 3 of them stood there in the quiet, steam-filled room, they all knew their relationship had just become infinitely more complicated. The week at the hot springs had worked. The shadows in Naruto's eyes receded, the crushing weariness of the shadow war replaced by a familiar, sharp clarity. But the relaxation didn't bring him peace, it brought him resolve. The covert war was inefficient, a slow bleed that was costing civilians their lives and rebels their hope. The smart political move was failing the people it was supposed to help. The morning after their return to Kumagakure, he didn't go to the training grounds. He went straight to the Raikage's tower, his expression a mask of cold determination. Yugito and Samui, seeing him walk past, exchanged a worried glance. The weariness was gone, but something far more dangerous had taken its place. Naruto entered Ai's office without waiting to be announced. The Raikage looked up from a mountain of paperwork, an eyebrow raised at the intrusion. I'm done, Naruto stated, his voice flat and final. The consultant mission is over. This shadow war is a failure. It's not stopping Yagura, it's just making him more paranoid, more brutal. The people are suffering. I've had enough. A leaned back in his chair, a slow, predatory grin spreading across his face. He had been waiting for this. He had seen the pressure building in the boy, the frustration with the half measures. He had been waiting for the true Uzumaki Namikaze spirit to finally snap. So what are you suggesting, brat? A asked, his voice a low rumble. Permission to end it, Naruto said, his blue eyes as cold as ice. No more sabotage, no more advising. Send me back, and I will go in, guns blazing, and I will cut the head off the snake. I will take down Yagura and his tower, and I will put an end to this bullshit, once and for all. The Raikage stared at him for a long moment, then let out a single, sharp bark of laughter. Finally. I thought you'd never ask. He stood, his massive frame radiating approval. I was getting tired of your subtle approach. This is how a war is truly won. Rest up. Then go do your thing. Understood, Naruto said. And Naruto, added, his grin fading into a look of deadly seriousness. Kumagakure is not involved. This is you, acting as a lone mercenary, finishing your contract. Plausible deniability remains paramount. Am I clear? Crystal, Naruto replied, a feral grin of his own finally appearing. It's just a private dispute between me and the Mizukage. Weeks later, Naruto stood in the misty, hidden base of the Kiri rebellion. Mei Terumi and Zabuza faced him, sensing the new, dangerous energy radiating from him. Naruto Dono, Mei began, what intelligence do you bring? I bring an end to this war, Naruto said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Tonight. Get your troops to the outskirts of Kirigakure. All of them. When you see the chaos at the front gates, and the sky lights up over the Mizukage's tower. That's your signal. Charge the city. The loyalist forces will be scattered and leaderless. Zabuza's eye widened. Tonight? You're going in alone? Yagura is in his fortress, surrounded by his best Anbu. It's suicide. It's a distraction, Naruto said. Just be ready. When you see your opening, take it. And don't hold back. He didn't wait for a reply, vanishing in a flicker of motion, leaving the rebel leaders to stare at the empty space he'd occupied. That night, under the cloak of a moonless, mist-shrouded sky, Naruto stood on a cliff overlooking Kirigakure. He took a deep breath. All right, Kurama. Let's get loud. Humph. It's about time, the fox rumbled in his mind. Naruto formed the cross seal. Shadow clone jutsu. 200 clones appeared in a silent wave. You all know the drill, the original commanded. Front gate. Make it flashy, make it loud. Draw every single guard in this village to you. Do not get destroyed too quickly. Go. The clones, wreathed in the crackling blue of the lightning release chakra mode, let out a collective war cry and shot towards the main gate. A second later, a series of massive, coordinated explosions erupted, 100 Risengans detonating simultaneously against the gate, shattering it into splinters. Alarms blared across the city as the 200-man army of Naruto's charged in, engaging the panicked Kiri shinobi. As the bulk of the village's forces scrambled to the front lines, the real Naruto was on the opposite side of the island, his hands pressed against the bedrock. Earth-style, subterranean voyage, he whispered, his form melting into the solid rock. He moved silently beneath the village, his senses locked onto the massive chakra signature of Yagura in the central tower. He surfaced in the deserted central plaza, right at the tower's base. Time to knock, he said to himself. He placed both palms on the ground, pouring a massive, focused amount of chakra into the foundation. This wasn't a simple tremor. It was a Fuinjutsu enhanced jutsu, designed to shatter a single, specific structure. Uzumaki's secret art, tectonic ripple. The ground didn't shake, it vibrated. A high-frequency pulse shot through the tower's foundation. The massive building groaned as spiderweb cracks raced up its walls. With a sound like a giant's roar, the entire Mizukage's tower began to collapse in on itself, a colossal plume of dust and debris rising into the night sky. The rebel army, assembled on the outskirts, saw the tower fall. Mei Terumi's eyes widened. That's the signal. All forces. Charge. High above the rubble, a single, small figure floated, protected by a sphere of water, his red, slitted eyes blazing with the Baiju's power. Yagura, the fourth Mizukage, glared down at the lone blonde shinobi who had just destroyed his fortress. You. Yagura snarled, his voice a distorted growl. You will pay for that. The payment's due, Naruto called back, his own body crackling to life with the steady, intense hum of his lightning release chakra mode. The blue aura enveloped him, his blonde hair standing on end as small arcs of electricity danced across his shoulders. He stood amidst the rubble of the fallen tower, a single, defiant point of light against the enraged cage. You arrogant brat. Yagura snarled, his Baiju'u enhanced chakra bubbling around him. He was a perfect Jinchuriki, a master of his Baiju'u's power, and he would not be humiliated in his own village by a child from Konoha. He raised his coral-like staff. Water style, great coral palm. A massive wave, not of water, but of razor-sharp, fast-growing coral, erupted from the ground, shooting towards Naruto, intending to impale and encase him. Naruto didn't flinch. He just flickered. He moved with a speed that defied physics, a blue-white thunderbolt that was simply gone. The coral spikes slammed into nothing, shattering the rubble where he had stood. "Looking for me?" Naruto's voice called out. Yagura spun, his Baijuu-enhanced senses screaming. Naruto was behind him, his sword drawn, its blade crackling with the same lightning energy that coated his body. He swung in a clean, horizontal arc. Yagura blocked with his staff, the impact sending a shockwave that shattered the windows of nearby buildings. The Mizukage was sent skidding back, his arms vibrating from the sheer, unexpected strength of the blow. "You're fast," Yagura growled, his surprise turning to fury. "But you're just a brat. And you're a tyrant," Naruto shot back, settling into a low kenjutsu stance. "And your reign ends tonight." What followed was a battle that defied convention. It was a clash between two of the most powerful shinobi in the world. Yagura, the perfect Jinchuriki, was a master of water and coral jutsu, his attacks both devastating and precise. He flooded the plaza, creating massive water dragons and impenetrable coral shields. But Naruto was simply faster. He was a ghost wreathed in lightning, a true inheritor of his father's legacy. He ran on the surface of Yagura's summon water, dodged coral spikes by a hair's breadth, and dismantled every ninjutsu Yagura threw at him with a perfectly placed wind style, Rasengan or a lightning-fast counterstrike. Every time Yagura thought he had him, Naruto was already gone, his afterimage the only thing the Mizukage's attacks could find. "Hold still," Yagura roared, his frustration mounting. "Why won't you hold still and die?" "Because it's a stupid way to fight," Naruto replied, appearing above him, his fist cocked back. He slammed a lightning-enhanced punch downwards. Yagura brought his staff up to block, but the force of the blow sent him rocketing down, crashing into the flooded plaza with a massive splash. While this high-level battle raged, the rebel army, led by Mei and Zabuza, had slammed into the confused and disorganized Kiri loyalist forces at the front gate. The 200 lightning armor clones, their primary mission of distraction complete, reformed and joined the rebels, acting as an unstoppable vanguard, punching a hole straight through the enemy lines. The battle for Kumagakure had begun. Yagura rose from the water, his body now trembling with an uncontrollable, murderous rage. His strategy, his power, his village. All of it was being dismantled by this one boy. He had been toyed with, outmaneuvered, and humiliated. You mock me?" Yagura screamed, his voice distorting, becoming deeper, more monstrous. "You think you're so strong? So fast? You don't know what real power is." A grotesque, dark red chakra began to erupt from his body, his skin bubbling and shifting. "I'll show you. I'll show you all. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy this whole, ungrateful village." Naruto landed on a piece of floating rubble, his lightning armor humming, his expression turning grim. He could feel the Baiju's consciousness, wild and full of hate, overwhelming Yagura's own. "You're not in control anymore, are you?" Naruto said quietly. "I am control." The Mizukage shrieked as his body exploded outwards in a cataclysm of water and chakra. Bones cracked, flesh expanded, and a colossal, monstrous form rose from the ruins of the plaza. It was a giant, turtle-like creature with three massive, shrimp-like tails, its single, glowing red eye fixed on Naruto with an expression of pure, unadulterated malice. The full form of Isabu, the three tails, had been unleashed. The ground trembled at its roar, a sound that shook the very soul. The rebel forces, fighting their way through the streets, froze, their faces turning pale with terror. It's the Mizukage." One of them stammered. "He's transformed." "We're finished," another whispered, his sword slipping from his grasp. "Hold the line." Mei Terumi's voice boomed, her own chakra flaring. "Look." She pointed towards the plaza. There, standing defiant against the colossal Baijuu, was the lone, lightning-wreathed figure of Naruto. "He's still fighting," Mei yelled. "He is our shield. We will not let his sacrifice be in vain. For Kiri. Charge." Inspired, the rebels let out a renewed war cry and charged into the fray. Naruto looked up at the massive, roaring Baijuu. He felt Kurama's power surge within him, a low, rumbling chuckle in his mind. "So, the little turtle wants to play. Let's show him how we dance, brat." "My thoughts exactly," Naruto said, his grin returning, sharp and feral. "Let's dance." He didn't wait. He shot forward, a blue-white thunderbolt, and ran directly up Isabu's massive, sand-caked arm. The Baijuu roared, trying to swat him, but Naruto was too fast, his movements a blur of lightning against the creature's dark, hulking form. "Water style, raging waves," Isabu bellowed, Yagura's voice now a distorted, monstrous echo. A torrent of high-pressure water erupted from its mouth, turning the flooded plaza into a churning, violent sea. Naruto was forced to leap back, landing on a piece of floating debris. Aisabu seized the opportunity, curling into a massive, spiked ball and rolling, intending to crush Naruto and half the city block with its coral palm, rolling tank technique. "That's a big target," Naruto yelled. Golden, ethereal chains exploded from his back, a manifestation of his Uzumaki lineage. They weren't the thin, precise chains his mother often used, these were thick, heavy, and radiated Kurama's power. Adamantine sealing chains. The chains shot out, slamming into the ground and erupting in front of the rolling Baijiu like a colossal, golden net. Aisabu crashed into the barrier, its momentum halted with a ground-shaking thud. The chains lashed out, wrapping around the Baijiu's limbs and neck, binding it, anchoring it in place. "Got you," Naruto roared, his lightning-wreathed body glowing as he poured chakra into the chains, holding the massive beast firm. The display of power sent a wave of shock through both armies. The rebel forces cheered, their morale surging. Even the loyalist Kiri Shinobi hesitated, their loyalty to a Mizukage who had just transformed into a raging monster wavering. He bound the Mizukage-sama? One of them stammered in disbelief. "Incredible." Mei Terumi breathed, her eyes wide with awe. Aisabu, however, was far from defeated. It thrashed against the chains, its raw Baijiu power straining them to their breaking point. "I will not be held." Yagura's voice screamed from within. The single, massive red eye of the Baijiu narrowed, and its cavernous mouth opened. Black and red chakra began to condense, swirling into a dense, vibrating sphere of pure, unadulterated malice. A tailed beast bomb. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. From this range, a direct hit would not only kill him but would vaporize half of Kumagakure, including the rebel army charging into the city. "He's lost it," Naruto yelled, his gaze fixed on the rapidly growing sphere. "He's going to destroy his own village." He knew he couldn't hold the Baijiu and stop the bomb. He had to make a choice. He released the chains, sacrificing his hold on the beast to focus on the greater threat. "Kurama, give me everything you've got." He projected inward. "Don't have to ask me twice." The fox roared back. Naruto's lightning release chakra mode exploded, the blue aura turning a blinding, golden white as Kurama's chakra fused with it. He held out his hand, chakra swirling in a violent vortex. Wind style, Rasengan. A normal Rasengan formed, but he didn't stop there. He poured his lightning nature chakra into it, the sphere crackling and shrieking, the sound of 1,000 birds becoming the roar of a thunderstorm. Lightning gale Rasengan. Aisabu fired. The Baijiu bomb shot across the plaza, a black beam of absolute destruction aimed at the heart of the city. Naruto didn't try to block it. He shot forward, a golden meteor of light and power, and slammed his own attack, not against the bomb, but slightly under it. "Uo-oh-oh," he roared, pushing with every ounce of his strength. The two jutsus met. The collision was blinding. Naruto's lightning gale Rasengan didn't stop the Baijiu bomb, but it diverted it. The black sphere of death was pushed upward, scraping past the tallest buildings and shooting high into the night sky. It detonated a mile above the village in a silent, terrifying flash that turned night into day, followed seconds later by a sound like the sky itself was ripping in two. The shockwave washed over the village, extinguishing fires and sending a hurricane-force wind through the streets, but the destruction, the vaporization, had been averted. Every single shinobi, rebel and loyalist alike, was frozen, staring at the sky, then at the lone, golden white figure panting on a piece of rubble. He had just saved them all. In the flooded plaza, Aisabu stared, its single eye wide with disbelief, before its expression twisted into a new, even deeper level of rage. It had been defied. It had been humiliated. Its mouth opened once more, and a new tailed beast bomb began to form, a swirling vortex of pure, chaotic chakra. Aisabu was enraged, its single-minded intent to obliterate the golden figure who had dared to defy it. Naruto, panting on the rubble, his golden white aura flickering, watched the sphere grow. He had saved the village once, but a second blast, even if diverted, would cause catastrophic damage. He was low on chakra from the diversion, and the battle had just begun. But the rebel army was now inside the city, fighting in the streets. He couldn't let this monster run rampant. "Right," Naruto said, his voice a low, determined growl. "That's enough of that. Time to end this." He took a deep, steadying breath, his gaze locking onto the Baijiu. He made a single cross seal. Shadow clone jutsu. A perfect, solid clone appeared beside him. He then pulled a pre-prepared paper tag from a pouch on his leg. "All right, Kurama. One last push. You ready? A deep, rumbling agreement echoed in his mind. Golden chains, the same ones from before, erupted from the real Naruto's back. They didn't target Aisabu directly. They shot out, slamming into the ground at 4 cardinal points, forming a wide, perfect square around the rampaging tailed beast. The chains pulsed with a blinding, complex Fuinjutsu script. Uzumaki's secret art, celestial gravity well, Naruto roared. This time, he didn't hold back. He poured a massive, devastating amount of his remaining chakra into the seals. The gravity inside the barrier didn't just increase, it multiplied. A 50x gravity field slammed down on Aisabu. The Baijuu let out a screeching, gurgling roar as it was instantly crushed, its massive, turtle-like body slamming into the flooded plaza, unable to move, unable to even lift its head. The tailed beast bomb, still forming in its mouth, dissipated into nothing. The creature was pinned, immobilized by a force of nature it couldn't comprehend. The real Naruto's legs buckled, the golden white aura around him vanishing, leaving only the blue crackle of his lightning armor. The chakra cost for the 50x field was astronomical, draining his reserves at a terrifying rate. He had to end this now. He slapped the anti-gravity seal onto his clone's back. You know what to do. The clone nodded. It focused, and its own blue lightning release chakra mode flared to life. It shot forward, unaffected by the crushing gravity, a living thunderbolt streaking towards the immobilized Baijuu. Aisabu's single, massive red eye, the only part of it that could still move, swiveled in terror. It was the beast's only vulnerable point. The clone didn't hesitate. It concentrated all of its lightning chakra into a single, devastating spear hand strike. Lariat. It plunged its arm straight into the Baijuu's massive eye. The clone didn't stop, pushing deeper, tearing through the ethereal chakra and dense flesh, feeling for the Baijuu's core. There, suspended in a sphere of chakra, was Yagura's human form. The clone's lightning-wreathed hand pierced straight through Yagura's chest, severing his connection to the Baijuu completely. The effect was instantaneous. Yagura's body went limp. The colossal form of Aisabu glowed with a brilliant blue light, then began to dissipate, dissolving into particles that floated up into the night sky. As the Baijuu's form faded, it heard a final, quiet whisper from Naruto. I'm sorry, Aisabu. Rest now. I'll see you in a few years. The rebel forces and loyalists alike stood frozen, staring in stunned silence as their monstrous, tyrannical Mizukage simply vanished. The war was over. A moment of pure, disbelieving silence, and then the rebel army erupted in a deafening, joyous roar of victory. The real Naruto, his job done, released the gravity seal. His golden chains retracted. His lightning armor sputtered and died. The last of his chakra evaporated. His legs gave out completely, and he collapsed to his knees, his vision tunneling to a pinpoint before fading to black. The last thing he saw before he passed out was Mei Terumi, her face a mask of awe and concern, rushing to his side, her voice shouting his name. As the rebels cheered and secured the plaza, and as Mei knelt to protect her fallen champion, no one noticed a single, swirling vortex open in the shadows of a distant, ruined building. A single, red eye within an orange mask surveyed the scene, the victorious rebels, the fallen Jinchuriki, the fading chakra of the Baijuu. A low, appreciative chuckle rumbled from the figure. So, Kushina's brat can sever a Baijuu's connection and kill its host, all while sparing the beast. How? Very interesting. Kobe swirled away, vanishing as if he had never been there, the night's events now a critical piece of his own grand plan. 3 days later, in Kumagakure, the Raikage's office was filled with a rare, quiet satisfaction. Kushina Uzumaki sat across from a stack of reports on the table between them. Uzushio's primary reconstruction phase is complete, Kushina said, a proud smile on her face. Kazuna's crew is ahead of schedule. At this rate, the main citadel will be inhabitable within the year. Excellent, A grunted, genuinely pleased. Kumo will continue to honor its side of the bargain. The resource shipments will not stop. Their meeting was interrupted as the office door was thrown open, not by an aide, but by a frantic, low-ranking Kumo shinobi who didn't even stop to salute. Lord Raikage. The shinobi panted, his eyes wide. A message. From the land of water. The rebellion. They've won. The civil war is over. Yagura is dead. Eyes widened. What? So soon? The messenger, high on adrenaline, finally noticed Kushina but was too far gone to care. It was Naruto Namikaze, sir. The reports say he did it. He did it alone. He tore down the Mizukage's tower, defeated the loyalist army, and took down the full Three Tails transformation. The shinobi paused for a breath, his voice filled with awe. He's a hero. But the message also says he's incapacitated. Severe chakra exhaustion. He's in a medical tent in Kiri. The shinobi finished his report, beaming with pride at Kumo's asset. He only then noticed the sudden, terrifying drop in temperature in the room. He turned and finally saw Kushina. Her head was bowed, her red hair shadowing her face. A deadly, suffocating aura began to radiate from her, a pressure so intense it made A himself break out in a cold sweat. Her hair began to lift from her shoulders, splitting into 9 distinct, swirling tails of pure, golden chakra. Kushina slowly raised her head. Her eyes were no longer violet, they were a blazing, slitted crimson. A, she said, her voice a deceptively calm, cold whisper that promised untold violence. The Raikage visibly swallowed. Please tell me, she continued, a sweet, terrifying smile on her face, that you did not send my son. My only son. Into the middle of a civil war. Alone. A, the most powerful and feared Kage in the world, a man who faced down by Juu for sport, found himself utterly and completely terrified. Now, Kushina, let's be reasonable. The scene cut. Naruto's eyes fluttered open. The world was a blur of canvas and dim light. He felt weak, his body heavy, his chakra coil scraped raw and empty. He was in a medical tent. A figure shifted beside him, blocking the light. So, a familiar voice said, a voice that was equal parts loving and terrifying. You decided to end a civil war by yourself, did you? We need to have a long talk about the definition of plausible deniability, Sochi. Naruto's vision cleared. The first thing he saw was his mother, sitting on a stool beside his bed, her arms crossed, her foot tapping an ominous, impatient rhythm. She looked furious. Naruto just gave her a weak, sheepish grin. Hey, Mom. Did I win? Kushina's eye twitched. Her furious expression softened for the barest fraction of a second with overwhelming relief, only to be immediately replaced by an even deeper level of maternal rage. She didn't shout. Instead, she leaned in close, her voice a terrifying, quiet hiss. Don't. Did I win? Me, she poked him in the chest, her finger like a steel rod. You reckless, impulsive, idiotic. Just like your father. Brat. What in the 7 hells was that? Plausible deniability? You call taking on a perfect Jinchuriki on his fully transformed by Juu by yourself plausible deniability. You used a 50 times gravity seal. Do you have any idea what that kind of chakra expenditure could have done to you if you'd miscalculated by a single second? But it worked, Naruto mumbled, wincing. The war's over. Yagura's. I don't care if it worked, she snapped, her voice rising. I care that you, my only son, decided to single-handedly take on a tailed beast. What were you thinking? I was thinking, Naruto said, his voice quiet but firm, his own exhaustion giving way to resolve, that a slow, covert war was costing more lives. That Mei's rebels were dying in a meat grinder. That one decisive blow, one overwhelming attack, would end it and save everyone. He met her furious gaze. It was the Kage's choice, Mom. I made it. And I'd make it again. Kushina stared at him. She saw Minato's unshakable resolve in his eyes, his willingness to bear the impossible burden, and her fury deflated, leaving only a deep, weary, and overwhelming pride. She sighed, her shoulders slumping, and finally pulled him into a tight, desperate hug. You're an idiot, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she held the back of his head. You're a reckless, noble, infuriating idiot. And I've never been prouder. The tent flap opened, and Mei Terumi stepped in, her expression hesitant. Kushina-sama? Naruto Dono? Am I interrupting? Kushina quickly composed herself, letting go of Naruto and wiping her eyes. No, Mizukage Dono. Come in. Mei smiled, a genuine, warm expression of pure gratitude. She bowed deeply to them both. On behalf of the people of Kirigakure, I have no words to express our thanks. Naruto Dono. You have given us our home back. You are a hero of the mist, now and forever. Naruto just blushed, scratching the back of his head. It was nothing, really. The victory was absolute. With Yagura gone, the loyalist forces surrendered. Mei Terumi was hailed as a hero and, with the unanimous support of the rebel forces and the liberated populace, was officially named the Godime Mizukage. Naruto's name became a legend in Kiri, the golden ghost of Konoha who ended a war in a single night. After a week of recovery, and enduring several more long, loud lectures from Kushina, Naruto was deemed fit to travel. He and his mother left Kiri, now an allied nation, and began the journey back to Kumo. When they arrived, A was waiting for them in his office. He wasn't smiling. Kushina walked in first, her face a mask of cold fury. Naruto followed, looking like a kid about to be scolded. A, Kushina said, her voice dangerously calm. We need to talk. He succeeded, A countered, his arms crossed, meeting her gaze. The war is over. A new, stable Mizukage is in power. A major threat to both our villages has been neutralized, and Kumo's hands are clean. I'd call that a perfect mission. You allowed my son, Kushina hissed, her red hair beginning to lift slightly, to go on a suicide mission against a perfect Jinchuriki. I allowed your son to execute a plan he proposed, A shot back, his voice rising to match hers. He's not a child, Kushina. He's a warrior. The most powerful one I've ever seen, next to his father. A slow war would have cost thousands more lives. He ended it in one night. He made the Kage's choice, and I respected his decision. Kushina stared at him, her 9 chakra tails beginning to manifest in a shimmering, golden aura of rage. A didn't flinch, his own lightning armor crackling to life around him. The pressure in the room was suffocating. Both of you, stop it. Naruto's voice, surprisingly strong, cut through the tension. Both looked at him. A-sama is right, Mom, Naruto said, stepping between them. It was my plan. My choice. And my responsibility. And A-sama. Mom is also right. You should have told her. I should have told her. He looked at Kushina, his expression pleading. I'm sorry, Mom. I knew you'd try to stop me. Or do it yourself. Kushina's chakra tails wavered. He was right. She would have. She took a deep, shuddering breath, the golden aura receding. She looked from her son's determined face to eyes stubborn one. Fine, she growled. It's done. But you, she pointed a finger at the Raikage, ever pull a stunt like this again without my express permission, and our alliance is the last thing you'll need to worry about. A just grunted, deactivating his own armor. It was the closest to an apology he was going to get, and the closest to an admission of fear he was ever going to show. The remaining months of Naruto's 3-year contract passed quickly. His final mission in Kiri had cemented his legend. He spent the last of his time training, but at a more relaxed pace, spending his off hours with B, Yugito, and Samui, his bonds with all of them now forged in trust and shared experience. Finally, the day came. Naruto, now 16, stood in the Raikage's office. He was taller, his features sharper, carrying the quiet, confident aura of a seasoned Kage-level shinobi. Kushina stood beside him, her arms crossed, looking proud. A sat behind his desk. Naruto, A began, his voice rumbling. Your 3 years are complete. You have exceeded every expectation. You have mastered my lightning release chakra mode, you have ended a civil war, and you are a warrior Kumo is proud to call an ally. He nodded. Per our agreement, Kumagakure has fulfilled its end. The reconstruction of Uzushio's main citadel is complete. And the funds for the 2nd and 3rd phases are secure, Kushina confirmed. Which brings us, A said, steepling his fingers, to the final condition. The marriage. You have spent 3 years getting to know both Samui and Yugito. Both are exceptional Kunoichi. Both have indicated their willingness to uphold this arrangement. The time has come. You must choose. Naruto's face was a mask of calm, but inside, his stomach was doing backflips. He looked at his mother, who just raised an eyebrow, leaving it to him. He thought of Samui, her intelligence, their debates on Fuinjutsu, her cool, steady presence. He thought of Yugito, her fiery spirit, their shared Jinchuriki bond, the easy camaraderie. He had grown to care for both of them, deeply. He took a deep breath. Raikage-sama. I can't choose. I's eyebrow shot up. What do you mean, you can't choose? The agreement is clear, brat. You must secure the alliance. I know, Naruto said, his composure finally cracking. And I will. It's just. Samui. She's brilliant, and calm, and she challenges my mind in a way no one else does. And Yugito. She's fierce, and passionate, and she understands a part of me that no one else ever could. How am I supposed to choose one and just discard the other? I can't do it. A stared at him, his expression slowly shifting from confusion to a kind of stunned disbelief. A low, rumbling chuckle started in his chest. Brat. You're even more like your godfather than I thought. Naruto frowned. What are you talking about? The Raikage laughed, a loud, booming sound. You fool. You do know I stipulated in the agreement that you had to marry at least one? I never said only one. He looked over at Kushina, who was suddenly looking very interested in the ceiling. Your mother didn't tell you? Naruto's head snapped towards Kushina. Mom? Kushina scoffed, her face flushing slightly as she glared at the Raikage. I didn't want my son to become a womanizing pervert like you or that white-haired fool Jiraiya. She huffed, her arms crossed defensively. One was more than enough. A just grinned. Well, the choice is yours, Naruto. One. Or both. Kumogakure's terms are met either way. Naruto stood there, his mind completely rebooting, as he was suddenly faced with a solution he had never, in a million years, considered. One. Or both? He looked from the Raikage's challenging grin to his mother's fuming, flustered expression, and was about to stammer out some kind of response. And then the world ended. It didn't begin with a sound. It began with a pressure. An invisible, godlike force that slammed down on Kumagakure, a village built on mountains. The mountains, under this impossible weight, simply ceased to exist. High above the sea of clouds, a lone figure floated, silhouetted against the sun. His black cloak, adorned with red clouds, billowed in a wind that did not exist. His face was a mask of cold divinity, his eyes a ripple of purple concentric circles. The Deva path of pain. He looked down at the unsuspecting village, at the Jinchuriki he had come to claim. He felt no hatred, no anger. Only a divine, cold purpose. The world, he said, his voice calm and melodic, shall know pain. He held his hands out. Shinra Tensei. Weeks earlier, Amigakure the rain fell in endless, industrial sheets against the tallest tower in the village hidden in the rain. Inside, Toby paced, his single orange masked eye glaring at the holographic projection of pain. Yagura is dead, Toby's voice was a low, dangerous growl, his flippant persona gone. The Three Tails is adrift. Lost. It will take at least 3 years for it to reform, and even then, we will have to hunt it down. A minor setback, Pain replied, his voice a monotone. A major setback, Toby snapped. The Nine Tails brat is the one who did it. He severed the Baiju's connection to its host and killed Yagura, all while sparing the beast. He is growing too powerful, too unpredictable. He is no longer just a Jinchuriki to be collected, he is an active, catastrophic threat to our plan. Pain remained silent, his gaze unwavering. He is in Kumagakure, Toby continued, his voice tightening. Along with the 2 tails and the 8 tails. 3 Baiju, 1 village. It is an unacceptable risk. And a perfect opportunity. The Raikage's arrogance in gathering them all under one roof is a gift. Go to Kumo. Retrieve all 3. Level the village if you must, but bring me the Jinchuriki. A long silence stretched between the 2 Akatsuki leaders. You do not command me, Toby, Pain said finally. But our goals align. The arrogance of the great villages, gathering Baiju like prized possessions, must be broken. Konoha's weapon in Kumo's hands is a symbol of that arrogance. He stood. Fine. I will go myself. And I will teach them the meaning of pain. Present day, Kumagakure the world shattered. The Raikage's office didn't explode, it disintegrated. The solid stone of the mountain fortress turned to dust, collapsing in on itself as the colossal, invisible force pressed down. Time seemed to slow. Kushina's maternal fury vanished, replaced by pure, cold instinct. Adamantine chains, she roared, golden chains erupting from her back, forming a shimmering, web-like shield around her and Naruto. Ai's reaction was just as fast. Lightning released chakra mode. His body exploded in a blinding blue aura, his reflexes pushing his body to its absolute limit as he grabbed both Kushina and Naruto, adding his own physical defense to her chakra-based one. Naruto's own senses screamed. Kurama. A violent, golden cloak of Baiju chakra flared to life, enveloping all 3 of them in a third, final layer of protection. The 3 cage-level powers combined for a fraction of a second. It was just enough. The force of the Shinra Tensei struck them, vaporizing Kushina's chains and shattering Ai's lightning armor. The golden cloak held, but the impact sent the 3 of them rocketing through the air, tumbling amidst the debris of what had once been the Raikage's tower. They fell for what felt like an eternity, crashing down, down, down. They landed, hard, in the center of a new, desolate landscape. The sound of the attack, a thunderclap that shook the entire continent, finally caught up to them. Naruto pushed a chunk of rock off his chest, his golden chakra flickering out, his ears ringing. He stood up, his legs trembling. Kushina was beside him, pushing herself to her knees, her face pale with shock. A was the first one to his feet, his body still sparking with residual lightning. He looked around. There was nothing. The village of Kumagakure was gone. The towering mountains, the high-altitude bridges, the countless homes. All of it had been leveled. They were standing at the bottom of a perfectly circular, colossal crater that stretched for miles in every direction. The sea of clouds had been blasted away, revealing the raw, barren earth far below. Ai's face, usually a mask of aggressive confidence, crumpled. He saw the bodies, the thousands of his people, his shinobi, his civilians. All of them. Gone in an instant. His voice was a broken, choked whisper. My village. Kushina stared, her hands trembling, her mind unable to process the scale of the devastation. A mountain range, Akage's fortress, a home to tens of thousands. Erased. Reduced to a smoking, circular crater in seconds. Naruto stood beside her, his body rigid, his senses screaming. The sheer, sudden loss of life was a physical weight, a void that punched the air from his lungs. Kushina whispered, taking a step toward the catatonic Raikage. A guttural, animalistic roar of pure, undiluted grief and rage tore itself from Ai's throat. It was a sound of absolute agony. My people, he bellowed at the empty sky, his body exploding in a furious, uncontrolled aura of lightning. WHO dares? Big. Bro. The voice was a pained wheeze from a nearby pile of rubble. A massive boulder was shoved aside, and Killer Bee emerged, dragging himself out. He was battered, bleeding from a dozen wounds, but alive. He was carrying the unconscious forms of Daru and C, his two Anbu bodyguards. B's sunglasses were gone, his eyes wide with horror as he took in the devastation. His usual rhyme and rhythm were gone, replaced by a choked, trembling voice. It's all gone. Everything. Yugito. Samui. They were in the lower sectors. A turned, his eyes wild, and saw his brother. The sight of B, alive, seemed to focus his cataclysmic rage. He didn't speak. He just looked up, his gaze piercing the heavens, searching for the one responsible. As if summoned, a figure descended from the sky. He landed softly in the very center of the crater, his black cloak with red clouds a stark contrast to the gray dust. He stood with a divine, serene calm, his purple, rippling eyes, the Rinnegan, surveying the destruction he had wrought. The Deva path of pain. You now understand, Pain's voice, melodic and calm, echoed across the desolation. This is the divine judgment on the arrogance of the cage. The arrogance of gathering weapons of mass destruction as if they were prized possessions. His gaze moved, locking onto the survivors. He saw A, the warrior cage, broken. He saw Kushina, the protective mother, radiating fury. And he saw the three Jinchuriki, Killer B, the eight tails, now joined by a groaning, newly conscious Yugito, who was pulling herself from the rubble, her clothes in tatters. And finally, Naruto, the nine tails, who was glowing with a cold, controlled, golden aura. I am here, Pain continued, to collect. The arrogance of this world has brought only suffering. We will end that suffering. Hand over the Jinchuriki. The two tails. The eight tails. And the nine tails. Do this, and your deaths will be swift. A stared at the man who had just annihilated his home, who had murdered his people, and was now calmly demanding their surrender. The Raikage's grief and sorrow did not recede. They were consumed, forged into a single, white-hot point of pure, annihilating rage. He didn't speak. He didn't make a plan. He simply roared. I'll kill you. In an instant, A was gone. He moved with a speed that surpassed Minato, a speed fueled by utter hatred, his fist cocked for a lariat that could shatter mountains. Lightning lariat. At the same moment, B's own chakra exploded, the form of the eight tails wrapping around him. Lariat, he roared, matching his brother's charge. The two most powerful shinobi and Kumo, their rage perfectly synchronized, attacked as one. Pain didn't even flinch. He simply raised his hand. Shinra Tensei. An invisible wall of force erupted from his palm. A and B, moving at near light speed, were swatted away like insects, sent tumbling back with bone-jarring force. Your pain is nothing to mine, Pain said, his voice devoid of emotion. You will learn your place. As the Raikage and B recovered, Kushina and Naruto landed beside them, their own expressions now masks of cold combat. He repels all attacks, Naruto said, his voice sharp, his mind already analyzing. Some kind of gravity manipulation. He pushed me away just as he pushed you. So we overwhelm him. A snarled. No, Kushina said, her golden chains already erupting from her back, snaking across the crater floor. We dissect him. A, B, Yugito, you're the distraction. Hit him high and low. Naruto, you're the spear. Match my timing. We pin him, you end him. A roared in agreement, his grief forged into a white-hot weapon. He and B, wreathed in their respective lightning auras, shot forward like twin comets. Double lariat. Yugito, her body cloaked in the ethereal blue fire of Matatabi, leapt high, launching a volley of cat fire claws to split Pain's attention. Simultaneously, Kushina's chains shot from the ground, aiming to bind Pain's limbs. It was a perfect, cage-level coordinated assault. Pain didn't move. Shinra Tensei. A catastrophic, invisible explosion of force erupted from his body. It wasn't a simple push, it was an absolute rejection. Kushina's chains were vaporized. Yugito was blasted from the sky. A and B, their lariats striking nothing but an unmovable wall, were sent tumbling back, their chakra cloaks shattering as they crashed into the rubble. He's a monster, Yugito choked out, pushing herself from the debris, her body smoking. As the four of them recovered, 5 more figures landed silently in a half-circle around the Deva path, their own red cloud cloaks billowing in the dust. The other 5 paths of pain had arrived. So, the Asura path chimed, its voice cold and mechanical as a panel on its arm opened, revealing a cluster of missiles. These are the weapons the Raikage gathers. This is not a battle, the Deva path stated, his voice calm. This is a harvest. The battle that followed was not a battle, it was a desperate, brutal brawl for survival. A, bellowing in pure rage, charged the Asura path, his lightning-enhanced chops shattering its mechanical limbs, only for the Naraka path to summon the King of Hell and restore the damage instantly. Killer B, in his full 8 tails form, unleashed an ink-clone barrage against the Animal Path's giant, multi-headed dog, while Yugito's blue flames were rendered useless against the all-absorbing Preta path. Naruto watched this, his mind a vortex of cold, clear thought. He saw Yugito, battered and bleeding but still fighting. He saw Samui's home, her village, gone. He saw the thousands of lives extinguished in an instant. The strategic, calculating mind of the shinobi who had ended Kiri's war vanished, replaced by a pure, focused, and utterly silent rage. Kurama. I'm ready, the fox's voice rumbled, a dark promise of unimaginable power. Naruto's calm, golden aura didn't just flare. It detonated. A new chakra, a fusion of his own, Kurama's, and the Kumo-honed lightning release, exploded into existence. It was a blinding, golden-white cloak of energy that crackled with blue-white sparks, his hair standing on end, his eyes a brilliant, cross-slitted crimson. He wasn't just wearing a cloak, he had become the storm. He vanished. The human path, moving to intercept A, froze. Naruto was suddenly in front of him. Too slow, Naruto whispered. A Rasengan, formed and driven in less than a microsecond, slammed into the path's chest. It didn't just push him, it obliterated him, vaporizing his entire upper torso. 1, Naruto counted, his voice a cold echo. The Preta path turned, its hands up, ready to absorb. Naruto flickered, appearing at its side. He didn't use ninjutsu. He used what A had taught him. Lariat, he roared, his arm, wreathed in golden lightning, striking the path's head. The absorbing technique was useless against a pure, Baijuu-enhanced physical blow. The head was torn clean from its shoulders. 2. The animal path's giant bird dove at him. Naruto just held up a hand. Uzumaki art, celestial gravity well. A 10x gravity field, focused into a 10-meter sphere, slammed the bird and its summoner into the ground as a flattened, broken mass. 3. 4. What? What is that speed? That power? A stammered, his lightning armor flickering in awe. He was watching a boy move with a speed that dwarfed his own. The Naraka path, its king of hell looming behind it, was all that remained besides the Deva path. It grabbed the Asura path's remains, attempting a restoration. Naruto appeared before them, his golden chains, now wreathed in the same crackling lightning, shooting from his back. They pierced both the Naraka path and the King of Hell, pinning them together. Fuinjutsu, Soul Seal Annihilation. The chains pulsed, and the 2 figures dissolved into dust, their chakra connections permanently severed. 5. The entire exchange had taken less than 30 seconds. 5 paths of pain were gone. In the center of the vast crater, only the Deva path remained. For the first time, a flicker of something, shock, perhaps even disbelief, crossed his serene, godlike features. The Akatsuki had vastly, catastrophically, underrated their target. Naruto landed 50 yards away, his golden white aura blazing, his crimson eyes locked on the final enemy. He was breathing heavily, but he was far from finished. He raised his hand, a new, massive Rasengan swirling to life, this one black with wind and gold with lightning. He was about to charge. Naruto, stop. Kushina's voice, sharp and commanding, cut through his rage. He froze, his attack dissipating. He turned. His mother was kneeling where the Asura path had fallen, her hand resting on its demolished head. She had a single black chakra rod clutched in her fist, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified realization. It's not him, Naruto, she said, her voice trembling slightly. He's not here. What do you mean, he's not here? Naruto growled, his golden aura still swirling, though the crimson in his eyes faded slightly, leaving the analytical blue. These bodies. They're puppets, Kushina said, standing up, the black rod held in her hand. This is a chakra receiver. They're all being controlled from a distance, like a more advanced, six-bodied puppet jutsu. She looked at the Deva path, her expression a mix of fury and dawning understanding. They share their vision. That's how they coordinated. But the chakra. The signal. It's coming from somewhere else. High up. Outside the crater. You are clever, Kushina Uzumaki, the Devapath said, his voice calm. He raised his hands, preparing for a final, massive attack. But cleverness will not save you. He was stalling, trying to recharge his primary ability after the initial blast. He's vulnerable, Kushina said, her mind racing. The real one. He has to be. He's focusing all his power into this one last body. If we can find him. She looked at the exhausted Kumo shinobi. A was on one knee, his body smoking from overuse, his arm clearly broken from the initial blast. B was out of his Baijuu form, panting heavily. Yugito was barely standing, her blue fire extinguished. Yugito. B, Kushina commanded, her voice ringing with authority. Get the Raikage out of here. Now. Find survivors, secure your wounded. This is our fight now. Yugito, her respect for Kushina absolute, nodded grimly. She and B hauled the protesting Raikage to his feet. She's right, bro. We're no good here. We gotta find Samui. The mention of her name seemed to cut through Ai's rage. He nodded, his expression a mask of grief, and allowed his siblings to flicker away into the rubble. Now, it was just mother and son, standing in the ruins of a village, facing the being that had destroyed it. So, Naruto said, his voice a low growl as he and his mother stood side by side. He's hiding. He's a coward. He's a controller, Kushina corrected, her own golden chains erupting from her back, mirroring her son's. And I'm a seal master. This is a bad matchup for him. She looked at the chakra rod in her hand. I just need to get one of his rods, while it's still linked. If I can analyze the signal, I can trace it back to the source. You mean the one sticking out of his body? Naruto asked, gesturing to the Deva path. Exactly, she replied, a fierce, predatory grin returning to her face. So, how about it, Sochi? You feel like pulling a god apart? Naruto's own grin matched hers, his golden white lightning armor flaring back to its full, devastating brightness. The rage was gone, replaced by a cold, precise focus. Let's show him what a real family can do. Together, a whirlwind of gold and crimson, mother and son charged. Chapter 8. Together, a whirlwind of gold and crimson, mother and son charged. The Deva path of pain, now the sole vessel for its controller's power, met their charge with a divine, cold indifference. Your bonds only create more targets. More pain. Shut up, Naruto roared, his golden white armor flaring as he flickered, appearing directly in front of Pain, his fist cocked for a lightning-fast blow. Banshu Tenon. Pain's hand shot out, not to block, but to pull. An irresistible gravitational force seized Naruto, yanking him off balance, his punch going wide as he was pulled helplessly toward the waiting black rod in Pain's other hand. Not so fast. Kushina snarled. Her golden chains, moving with a speed that rivaled Naruto's, whipped through the air. They didn't target Pain, but her son. They wrapped around Naruto's waist, anchoring him, and with a furious roar, she yanked him back, stopping his forced advance inches from Pain's impaling rod. You speak of pain? Kushina yelled, her red hair flaring as she held her son fast. You, who hide behind puppets and destroy a village from the sky. You know nothing of true pain. Peace is born from suffering, Pain countered, his voice rising, a flicker of emotion finally entering his monotone. You will learn this. Shinra Tensei. A powerful, invisible wave of force blasted outward. Kushina took the brunt of it, her chains shattering as she was sent tumbling back, skidding across the rubble-strewn floor of the crater. The momentary repulse, however, was what Naruto was waiting for. The 5-second interval, he yelled, already moving. I know, Kushina shouted back, righting herself, her eyes locked on her target. Go. While Naruto shot forward like a golden comet, Kushina's chains erupted from the ground again. They didn't attack Pain. They shot past him, towards the bodies of the other 5 paths that Naruto had demolished. They were aiming for the chakra rods. Pain, his primary ability on cooldown, was forced to deal with Naruto head-on. He met the Jinchuriki's charge, his movements precise and controlled, using the black rods as makeshift weapons. The battle became a blur of CQC, Naruto's overwhelming speed and power against Pain's flawless Rinnegan-enhanced reflexes. What gives you the right? Naruto grunted, dodging a swipe and slamming a lightning-wreathed fist into Pain's shoulder, staggering him. To destroy a village? To murder thousands? This is peace, Pain roared, kicking Naruto back. The peace of a shared, terrible understanding. You, who have known only strength and celebration, what could you possibly know of the suffering required to achieve it? Privilege? Kushina's voice was a shriek of pure, unadulterated fury. You think we don't know pain? We lost our home. We lost our families. We lost Minato. We lost everything. But we don't become the pain. We fight it. Her emotional roar was the perfect distraction. Pain's gaze flickered towards her for a fraction of a second, his movements faltering. It was the opening. Kushina's chains, which had been snaking through the rubble, found their mark. They pierced the fallen bodies of the other paths, and with a violent yank, ripped the black chakra rods from their flesh. No, Pain yelled, realizing his connection was exposed. He repelled the chains, but it was too late. Kushina landed beside her son, her hand clutched around a single, black rod. Got it. She grinned fiercely. Then it's over, Naruto said, his voice cold. Pain, knowing his controller's location was now at risk, began gathering all his remaining power, his arms outstretched, a small, black sphere forming between his hands. If this is your choice, then you will be erased together. Chibaku Tensei. You're not fast enough, Naruto roared. He wasn't going to let that jutsu complete. He didn't form a Rasengan. He didn't weave a sign. He used what A had taught him. He shot forward, a Baiju-enhanced, golden-white flash of pure, unadulterated speed, and slammed his entire body into the Deva path. Lariat. The sound of a thunderclap echoed through the crater. The Deva path's body didn't just break, it disintegrated. The final puppet clattered to the ground in a pile of broken limbs and tattered robes, the black sphere of the embryonic Chibaku Tensei fizzling into nothing. Silence. The battle was won. Naruto stood panting, his golden white armor flickering and fading, revealing the deep, profound exhaustion beneath. Kushina landed beside him, her own chains retracting as she clutched the black rod. She closed her eyes, focusing her Fuinjutsu-enhanced senses on the chakra signal. The signal, she whispered. It's weak. But it's still there. High up. On the highest peak overlooking the crater. Her eyes snapped open, her expression of triumph suddenly vanishing, replaced by one of profound, horrified shock. As she focused on the signal, she felt the signature of the chakra behind it. Ravaged, twisted, but unmistakably. Uzumaki. No. She thought, her blood running cold. It can't be. She looked up at the shattered mountain, her mind reeling. Naruto, seeing the look on her face, put his exhaustion aside. Mom? What is it? It's one of us, she whispered, her voice trembling. The one in control. He's an Uzumaki. She looked at her son, her eyes now a mixture of cold fury and deep sorrow. Let's go finish this. Naruto, running on adrenaline and Kurama's fumes, nodded grimly. He didn't understand the full implications, but he trusted his mother's senses. Together, they leapt, scaling the sheer, broken cliffs of the highest mountain peak, moving towards the faint, pulsating chakra signal. They found it near the summit. A grotesque, massive tree, its trunk seemingly made of paper, was crudely camouflaged against the rock face. It pulsed with a faint, malevolent chakra. Kushina didn't hesitate. Her golden adamantine chain shot out, not in an attack, but as a key, interfacing with the paper and ripping the door open with a violent tear, revealing a dark, metallic chamber within. They landed silently inside. The air was cold and hummed with the sound of strange machinery. In the center, a large, ghetto mazo-like throne sat, and plugged into it was the most emaciated figure Naruto had ever seen. A man with shocking, vibrant red hair, the unmistakable color of the Uzumaki clan, was pierced by dozens of black rods, his body little more than a living skeleton connected to the machine. Before they could take another step, a blur of white paper intercepted them. A woman with calm, blue-purple hair and paper wings unfurled from her back, her expression a mask of cold, protective fury. You will not touch him. Conan, A weak, rasping voice echoed from the throne. Kushina held up a hand, stopping Naruto, who had flared his golden white armor back to life. Her chains erupted from her back, coiling defensively, but she didn't attack. Her full attention was locked on the man in the chair. Her fury from the battle was gone, replaced by a cold, dreadful sorrow that was far more terrifying. She held up the black chakra rod she had taken from the Deva path. I felt it, Kushina said, her voice quiet, yet it echoed with power. A chakra signature I haven't felt. A life force. I haven't sensed since Uzushio fell. I thought I was the last one. She took a step closer, her violet eyes staring at Nagato's skeletal frame and his crimson hair. That hair. That vitality, however faint. You are an Uzumaki. You are one of my kin. Naruto looked from his mother's blazing red hair to the man's, the family resemblance undeniable. This monster. Was his family? Konan's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of confusion breaking her defensive mask. Kushina's voice trembled, not with weakness, but with a profound, righteous anger. How? She demanded. How could one of us do this? She gestured to the devastation outside, the miles-wide crater that was once a village. Our clan was destroyed by the great villages. We were hunted, scattered, betrayed. Our entire legacy is one of endurance, of protecting our family, of living. And you? You take our power, our life force, and you use it to become the very thing that destroyed us? You've desecrated our name. Nagato's hollow, Rinnegan-filled eyes stared at her, and for the first time, a flicker of an emotion other than pain, pure, unadulterated shock, passed through them. Uzumaki? He rasped, the word foreign on his tongue. My parents, their hair. I was told I was from a line of refugees. He had never known. He had never understood the source of his immense vitality, his natural affinity for chakra. His shock slowly twisted into a cold, bitter, rattling laugh. It doesn't matter. Uzumaki. Konoha. It is all the same. What are you talking about? Naruto finally growled, stepping forward. What does Konoha have to do with this? Everything. Nagato's voice gained a sharp, biting edge. You ask me why I am this way? You ask me why I know pain? He glared at Kushina, his gaze burning with a resurrected hatred. My pain. My journey to this chair. It began the day your village, the Konoha shinobi you fight for, killed my parents. The accusation hung in the cold, metallic air, sucking the remaining strength from Naruto's legs. He stared, his mind reeling. What? What are you talking about? Konoha. We wouldn't just. You wouldn't? Nagato's voice was a harsh, rattling cough that sounded like a broken laugh. You live in your bright, tree-lined village, celebrated as a hero's son. What do you know of the shadows Konoha casts? What do you know of the rain? He took a ragged, painful breath, his Rinnegan eyes seeming to look through them, into a past filled with fire and mud. I was a child. My family and I were refugees, non-combatants, hiding in our small home, trying to wait out your second shinobi war that had spilled into our land, into Kumagakure. We had no part in it. His voice grew colder, trembling with a decades-old rage. Two Konoha Chunin, desperate for food, broke into our home. They saw my parents. And mistook them for enemy shinobi. My parents. They attacked to protect me. And your Konoha ninja. They cut them down. In front of my eyes. They killed them without hesitation. Kushina's hand went to her mouth, her own fury faltering, replaced by a cold, familiar dread. She remembered that war. She remembered the desperation, the paranoia. The mistakes. I didn't know, Naruto whispered. I'm sorry. Sorry? Nagato spat the word. Your sorry doesn't bring them back. It doesn't undo what was done. His gaze became distant, lost. In that moment, something awakened in me. This power. He gestured to his eyes. I killed them. The Konoha shinobi. I didn't even know how. I just wanted them to stop. When I came to my senses, I was an orphan, a monster, alone in a war-torn land. He looked at Konan, and for a fleeting moment, his expression softened. I wandered, starving, until I found others like me. Other orphans of your wars. I found Konan. And I found Yahiko. At the mention of that name, the one Kushina had heard earlier, Konan flinched, her paper wings trembling slightly. We were just children, Nagato continued, his voice now a hollow monotone, devoid of all emotion save for a deep, chilling exhaustion. Trying to survive. Stealing food, hiding in bombed-out ruins, dreaming of a day when the rain would stop. When the wars would end. We dreamed of a peace that heroes like yours promised but never delivered. His eyes drifted back to Naruto and Kushina, a new, more complex layer of pain entering his gaze. We searched for anyone who could teach us, protect us. And one day, we found them. We found the ones responsible for all of it. We stumbled upon a battle between your village's greatest champions and Hanzo of the Salamander. Kushina's breath hitched. She knew this story. The legendary Sannin. Yes, Nagato confirmed, a bitter twist on his lips. Jiraiya. Tsunade. Orochimaru. Naruto's blood ran cold. Pervy Sage? They were the victors, Nagato rasped. The heroes. We begged them for help. Just food. But Orochimaru. He suggested it would be a mercy to kill us. Tsunade. She wanted to leave us. She was broken, just like the rest of this world. But one of them stayed. Nagato's gaze fixed on Naruto, his Rinnegan seeming to pierce his very soul. Your godfather, Jiraiya. He stayed behind. The accusation, layered with a complexity that defied simple hatred, struck both Naruto and Kushina. Naruto, who had just been fighting for his life, could only stare, his mind struggling to reconcile the image of his perverted, bumbling, yet kind-hearted godfather with this man's story of war and death. Pervy Sage? Naruto whispered, his exhaustion and confusion battling for dominance. What? What are you saying? He trained you? He did, Nagato rasped, a cough shaking his emaciated frame. Konan instinctively moved to steady him, her paper-like hand resting on his shoulder. He felt guilt. He saw what his village's war had done to us, 3 starving orphans. So, he stayed. He taught us ninjutsu. Not to fight in his war, but simply to survive. He gave us food. He gave us shelter. A flicker of an ancient, forgotten warmth entered Nagato's eyes. He was kind. He believed in us. He believed in Yahiko's dream. A dream of a world without this endless cycle of hatred. Then what happened? Kushina asked, her voice low, her chain still coiled defensively but her stance softening. She knew Jiraiya. She knew his deep-seated guilt over the wars, his endless search for peace. This part of the story rang true. If he gave you hope. What turned you into this? The warmth in Nagato's eyes vanished, extinguished as if by a cold wind, replaced by an abyss of pain so profound it was almost a physical force. His breath hitched. Nagato, don't, Konan said softly, her voice filled with a desperate plea. You don't have to relive this. They must understand, Nagato choked out. They must understand the pain. Konan looked at the 2 Uzumaki, at Kushina's demanding gaze and Naruto's pained confusion. She saw Nagato trembling from the effort of speaking, and her own resolve hardened. She would bear this burden for him. He taught us, Konan said, her voice a cold, quiet monotone, and then he left, believing we could achieve peace on our own. And we tried. Her gaze became distant, lost in a sea of rain-soaked memories. Yahiko. He was our leader. He was our light. He built an organization, the Akatsuki, not of mercenaries, but of shinobi who wanted peace, who were tired of our land being the battleground for the great nations. We didn't seek power. We sought an end to the fighting. She took a shuddering breath, her paper wings trembling with suppressed rage. Our influence grew. We became a symbol of hope in Kumagakure. And that terrified the leader of our village, Hanzo of the Salamander. Kushina's eyes widened. Hanzo. A name synonymous with brutal, uncompromising power. He saw Yahiko as a threat to his rule, Konan continued, her voice dripping with venom. So he laid a trap. He offered to host peace talks, to officially recognize our group. He said he wanted to work with us to bring peace to the nations. She turned her cold, hateful gaze on Kushina. And he brought an ally to ensure his peace was kept. An ally from your village. No, Kushina whispered. Danzo Shimura, Konan spat the name like poison. He and his Root Onbu, working in the shadows, just as they always do. They arranged the ambush. They surrounded us, Hanzo and Danzo's forces, and they gave Nagato an ultimatum. Konan's voice broke, a single, paper-thin tear rolling down her cheek. They had me. A kunai to my throat. Hanzo threw another kunai at Nagato's feet. She looked at the skeletal man in the chair, her heart breaking all over again. He told Nagato to kill Yahiko. Or I would die. Naruto just stared, horrified. Yahiko. He didn't even hesitate, Konan's voice was barely a whisper. He just smiled. He told Nagato to believe in his own dream. And he walked right into Nagato's kunai. He killed himself, Nagato's voice rasped, The words a confession that had haunted him for decades. To save her. To save me. And in that moment, I understood. Your Sanin's hope. It was a lie. Konoha's peace. Is a fantasy. There is no such thing. There is only pain. And the cycle of hatred that Konoha and the other villages perpetuate. He looked up, his Rinnegan blazing, his skeletal body trembling with a sudden surge of chakra. In that moment, I unleashed my power. I summoned the Geto Mazo, I slaughtered them all. Hanzo, his men, Danzos. But it was too late. Yahiko was gone. My body was broken. My dream was dead. All that was left was pain. Kushina and Naruto stood in stunned silence. The sheer, unadulterated tragedy of the story, the betrayal. It was overwhelming. Kushina's mind raced, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying clarity. Danzo. His relentless paranoia about the Uchiha. His attempts to control and isolate her and Naruto. Orochimaru's attack during the exams. This was all connected. The shadow that had haunted Konoha, the shadow she and Hiruzen had been fighting, wasn't just in their village. This is the truth of your world, Nagato said, his voice sinking back into that exhausted, hollow rasp. The truth your village is built on. Now. Tell me, hero of Konoha. Who is the real monster here? Naruto stood in stunned, horrified silence. His mind, which had been so clear and focused on the battle, was now a maelstrom of confusion. He looked at his mother, his eyes wide, searching for an answer, for some way to refute the story. But he found no denial in her expression. Kushina's golden chains had receded, her chakra retracting. The righteous, all-consuming fury she had felt moments ago was gone, replaced by a cold, familiar, and deeply weary anger. The anger was no longer directed at the man in the chair, but at the shadow that had just been given a name. Danzo, she whispered, the name tasting like poison, just as it had on Konan's lips. She looked at Nagato, not with hatred, but with a terrible, dawning empathy. You are right. About Danzo. Konan and Nagato both looked at her, surprised by the admission. That shadow. That poison. It's been rotting our village from the inside for decades, Kushina continued, her voice trembling with a suppressed, icy rage. He's the one who fanned the flames of suspicion against the Uchiha clan after the Kyūbi attack, trying to tear the village apart. He tried to take my son from me when he was just a baby, to turn him into a mindless, loyal weapon for Konoha. Just like he tried to do to you. This new information struck Nagato, complicating his simple narrative of hatred. Konoha wasn't just a monolithic evil. It was a place with its own shadows, its own victims. This woman, this fellow Uzumaki, had been fighting the same man he had. But, pervy sage. Naruto finally spoke, his voice quiet, his mind fixed on one, unshakable point of confusion. He wouldn't have abandoned you. Not if he knew. He's a pervert, and he's goofy, but he's not. He's not that. He wouldn't have known what Danzo was planning. He didn't, Konan said, her voice surprisingly soft. She looked at Nagato, who had his eyes closed, lost in the agonizing memory. Jiraiya-sensei. He was a kind man. He trusted us. He believed in Yahiko's dream. She then turned her gaze to Nagato, a plea entering her voice for the first time. Nagato. This path. The one we've been on. The one he set us on. She didn't have to say Tobi's name. They both knew. This isn't what Yahiko wanted. Yahiko wanted to build peace, not force it through fear. He wanted to stop the cycle of pain, not become its master. Konan, who had followed Nagato's descent into darkness out of unwavering loyalty, was finally seeing a different path. These two Uzumaki, this mother and son, they were living proof that a different way was possible. They had faced tragedy, they held immense power, but they hadn't become monsters. It is the only way, Nagato whispered, his conviction wavering for the first time. The world. It only understands pain. To stop the wars, to force them to understand. A weapon is required. A pain so absolute it would create a lasting peace. You're wrong, Kushina said, her voice like steel. She stepped forward, her red hair flaring, not with Baijuu chakra, but with her own undeniable life force. You, an Uzumaki, should know that better than anyone. Our entire clan endured pain. We were scattered, hunted, and destroyed. But we didn't become the pain. We built, we loved, we lived. She pointed a trembling finger at the skeletal figure, her voice rising to a roar. You are using our clan's sacred life force to power a machine that just obliterated a village. You've become the very thing that destroyed us. You've become Hanzo. You've become Danzo. The accusation hit Nagato with the force of a physical blow. He looked down at his own emaciated hands, at the black rods connecting him to the machine, at the lifeless body of his friend Yahiko being used as a puppet. He had sought to become a god to end the cycle, only to become the very monster that had started his own. He looked at Kushina, the indomitable pillar of life. He looked at Naruto, the boy who had just defeated him so effortlessly. For the first time in decades, a single, profound, agonizing tear of doubt rolled from his Rinnegan eye. The tear seemed to break the spell. The crushing, divine pressure emanating from Nagato faltered. Naruto, seeing the man's resolve crack, opened his mouth to speak, but Kushina held up a hand, stopping him. Her own anger had receded, replaced by a deep, profound, and ancient sorrow. "You don't even know, do you?" she whispered, her voice aching with a history he had never been taught. "You don't know what you've shamed. What that red hair truly means." Nagato's hollow gaze drifted from her to Naruto, then back. "It means nothing. Just a target." "No," Kushina said, taking a step closer, her voice filling with a nostalgic warmth that was more powerful than her rage. "It means home. It means Uzushio Gakure." Konan and Nagato looked at her, confused. "Uzushio Gakure? Our homeland," Kushina said, a sad smile touching her lips. "You think our clan was just a name? A line of refugees? We were a nation. An island village surrounded by whirlpools, a fortress of Fuinjutsu. But it wasn't the seals that made it special. It was the people." Her eyes became distant, seeing a past he had never known. "It was the loudest, most chaotic, most joyful place in the world, you know. Full of stubborn, hot-headed fools with hair as bright as fire. We'd have festivals for no reason, play pranks on our cage, and argue in the streets so loud you could hear it in the next country. We laughed more than we fought, and we loved our family with a fierceness that the other nations found terrifying." The smile faded. "You said Konoha's war made you an orphan. Do you know why our war started? Because Kumo, Kiri, and Iwa. They all allied against us. They feared us. Not because we were monsters, but because we were unbreakable. They feared our Fuinjutsu, our loyalty to each other, our uncontrollable life force. They feared the joy and the strength we had in our bonds. So they united, and they burned our home to the ground." She looked at Nagato, her eyes now mirroring the pain tear on his cheek. "I was a refugee, just like you. I watched my family die, just like you. I had every reason to take my power, to take the Baijuu inside me, and make the world pay. I had every reason to become my pain." She pointed a trembling finger at the skeletal figure in the machine. "But this is not the Uzumaki way. Our legacy is to endure. To build. To laugh in the face of despair. You have taken all of our strength, all of our sacred vitality, and you've let it be drained by those eyes, chained to this throne. You've become a puppet for your own grief. You're not a god, Nagato. You're a victim who chose to become a monster, and in doing so, you are shaming the very blood in your veins." The words hit Nagato with a force his Shinra Tensei could never repel. He wasn't just a monster. He was a traitor to a legacy he never even knew he had. A legacy of joy, laughter, and endurance. Not pain. "Nagato," Konan whispered, her hand on his arm, her own eyes filled with tears. She looked at Kushina, then at Naruto. She's right. Her loyalty, which had been solely to Nagato and his pain, was shattering. Kushina's words had given voice to the doubt she had harbored for years. Yahiko's dream. It wasn't this. It had been laughter. It had been camaraderie. It had been Uzumaki. The man in the mask. Konan admitted, the words spilling out. "Toby. He's the one who gave Nagato this path. After Yahiko died. He's been using us. Using Yahiko's dream." Kushina and Naruto froze. "Toby? He said he was Madara Uchiha," Konan continued, the confession now a flood. "He promised us the power to achieve peace. The power of the Baijuu. He helped us. Guided us. Manipulated us." Nagato began to cough, a deep, rattling, body-racking spasm that shook his entire machine. He looked at Kushina, this impossible phantom of his lost heritage, and at Naruto, the boy who was the living embodiment of the path he'd forsaken. You don't understand." Nagato rasped. He has. But the strain was too much. His eyes rolled back, and his head slumped forward, his breathing shallow, the last of his energy spent. "Nagato," Konan cried out, her paper wings fluttering as she rushed to the throne, her defensive posture forgotten. She placed a hand on his chest, her expression one of pure terror. Nagato, stay with us. Naruto, his golden white armor flickering out from exhaustion, took an instinctive step forward. He needs help. Don't, Kushina said, her voice low and sharp, putting a hand on her son's chest. She wasn't looking at Nagato's face, but at his eyes, the purple, rippling Rinnegan. Her expression was no longer just angry or sad, it was one of cold, dawning, horrified realization. Mom? Naruto asked, confused by her sudden stillness. All this time. I was so focused on your hair, Kushina whispered, her voice barely audible. On the Uzumaki blood. I didn't truly look at the source of your power. She took a slow step towards the throne, her gaze fixed on Nagato's closed, purple-ringed eyes. Konan tensed, ready to strike. Stay back. Those eyes, Kushina said, ignoring Konan, her voice resonating with the absolute certainty of a master censor and Fuinjutsu expert. They're the reason you're like this. They're killing you. Konan froze. What? What are you talking about? That is his power. That is not his power, Kushina snapped, her violet eyes blazing. I'm an Uzumaki. I can feel his life force. It's being drained, like a whirlpool going down a sink. This machine, she gestured to the throne, is just a crude way to keep you alive. But the real parasites are those eyes. They are a foreign chakra, grafted onto your system. Your Uzumaki body, with its immense vitality, is the only reason you've been able to sustain them for this long. Anyone else would have burned out and died in a week. Nagato's eyes fluttered open, his breathing shallow, hearing her words. Konan's face went pale. It was true. Ever since the day Yahiko died, the day Nagato had summoned the Geto Mazo and his body was ravaged, he had been in constant, agonizing pain. His power had grown, but his life had been draining away. They had always assumed it was the price of the Mazo. That's not all, Kushina said, her voice dropping to a cold, analytical whisper as she examined the chakra signature she could now clearly sense. I don't know how you got them. I don't know who did this to you. But those eyes. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to an Uzumaki. What? Nagato rasped. Kushina locked her gaze with his. I know Uchiha chakra when I feel it. I've lived with my best friend, Mikoto, my whole life. I've felt the power of the Sharingan up close. This. She pointed at his Rinnegan. This is Uchiha chakra. Incredibly old, incredibly powerful. But Uchiha. And there's something else, too. Something even older. I can't quite put my finger on it. The revelation slammed into Nagato and Konan with the force of a physical blow. Their minds instantly raced, connecting the dots with horrifying speed. The eyes. The man in the mask who had guided them. The man who called himself Madara Uchiha. He, Konan whispered, her entire body trembling. He always called them his eyes. He said he was just letting Nagato borrow them until the time was right. We thought he was being metaphorical, claiming ownership over our organization's power. He wasn't being metaphorical, Kushina said, her voice grim. Those are his eyes. Or they belong to his bloodline. He didn't just find you, Nagato. He chose you. A new, more terrible realization dawned on Konan. He gave them to you. Nagato, he must have. When you were a child. He planned all of this. She looked at Nagato's emaciated form, his childhood, his pain, Yahiko's death, all of it suddenly recontextualized. Not as a tragic series of events, but as a long, meticulously crafted plan. He's been playing with us. From the very beginning, Nagato's voice was a broken whisper. Nagato began to cough, a deep, rattling, body-racking spasm that shook his entire machine. He looked at Kushina, this impossible phantom of his lost heritage, and at Naruto, the boy who was the living embodiment of the path he'd forsaken. You don't understand. Nagato rasped. He has. But the strain was too much. His eyes rolled back, and his head slumped forward, his breathing shallow, the last of his energy spent. Nagato, Konan cried out, her paper wings fluttering as she rushed to the throne, her defensive posture forgotten. She placed a hand on his chest, her expression one of pure terror. Nagato, stay with us. Naruto, his golden white armor flickering out from exhaustion, took an instinctive step forward. He needs help. Wait, Kushina's voice was low and sharp. She put a hand on her son's chest, stopping him. She approached the throne, her gaze fixed on the black rods piercing Nagato's emaciated back. Konan tensed, her body crackling with paper seals. Stay back. Don't touch him. Those rods aren't just controlling his puppets, Kushina said, her voice a cold, analytical monotone as she examined the machinery. They're draining him. They're amplifying the parasitic effect of those eyes and channeling his Uzumaki life force directly into that machine, just to keep him alive. He's killing himself to power a lie. She didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, she placed her hand gently on Nagato's crimson hair, her expression a mask of profound sorrow. A warm, pure, Uzumaki chakra flowed from her palm, not a jolt, but a gentle, steadying current of life. It wasn't healing, but it was stabilizing. Nagato's breathing, which had been a shallow rattle, evened out. His eyes, which had rolled back, fluttered and opened, focusing weakly on the woman before him. Why? He rasped, his voice barely a whisper. Why? Help me? Because your family, Kushina said simply, her voice soft but laced with an iron-hard conviction. And because you are utterly, completely, and tragically wrong. Nagato's hollow gaze was bitter. You speak of Tobi. Madara. Of lies. His voice gained a fragile, desperate strength as he fought against the pain. It doesn't matter. His path. Even if it was built on manipulation. It works. My pain. My almighty push. It destroyed this village. It forced them to understand. It is the only way to achieve true peace. He struggled to lift his head. Your path. Hope? Endurance? What has it achieved? More war. More pain. Your entire life, you've just been a cog in Konoha's war machine. How is your way? This Uzumaki way. Any better? Kushina met his gaze. She didn't get angry. She didn't raise her voice. She spoke with a powerful, sad, and unshakable truth. You think my way achieves nothing? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Nagato, look at me. I am standing here. I am alive. My son is alive. That, right there, is the Uzumaki victory. We endure. You talk about your pain from Konoha. When I was a child, not much younger than Yahiko was when he died, Kumo Shinobi kidnapped me from Konoha. They tried to steal me, my power, and make me their weapon. Konan's eyes widened. By your logic, Kushina continued, I should have unleashed the Kyūbi. I should have burned Kumo to the ground for what they did. I should have made them pay. She took a deep breath, her gaze never leaving his. And you want to know who had a hand in the destruction of Uzushio? Who joined the alliance that wiped our people off the map, scattering us to the winds as refugees like your parents? She didn't wait for an answer. Kumo. This new information struck Nagato. The village he had just destroyed had been an enemy of his own clan? For years, Kushina said, her voice a low murmur of old, cold anger, I held that grudge. I hated them. I wanted them to suffer for what they did to my home, to my family. And then, the world changed. My husband, Minato. He fought the current Raikage, He came back from that fight and told me, Kushina, he is a hot-headed brute, but he is an honorable man. Minato saw the person beneath the cage, something your path of pain deliberately ignores. She leaned closer, her expression intense. And just a couple years ago, my son, my Naruto, was in the Konoha Chunin exams. The Raikage was there as an ally. And after the exams, he and I forged a new treaty. An alliance between the very village that kidnapped me and the last matriarch of the clan they helped destroy. Kushina's voice filled with a profound, triumphant pride. And what were my terms for this alliance, Nagato? Vengeance? Destruction? Pain? No. I demanded that as reparation for their part in our clan's destruction, Kumagakure will pay for the full reconstruction of Uzushio Gakure. Nagato's eyes, his impossible Rinnegan, widened in pure, disbelieving shock. It's happening right now, Kushina said, her own eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. My dream. To see life on Uzu once more. It's being rebuilt. By the very hands that helped tear it down. That, Nagato, is the Uzumaki way. That is the strength you've shamed. We don't find peace by forcing people to their knees with pain. We find it through forgiveness. Through understanding. Through having the strength to demand a better future, not just a quieter one. Naruto stepped forward, his own exhaustion forgotten, his voice resonating with his mother's. She's right. I just came from the land of water. I spent the last year there. Nagato's gaze shifted to him. I saw Yagura's peace, Naruto said, his voice grim with the memory of the Shadow War. It was a nightmare. A civil war, bloodline purges. It was just like your story. More pain, more hatred, more orphans. It was your philosophy, just on a smaller scale. And it was failing. So I ended it, Naruto stated simply. I took down Yagura. I helped the rebellion, led by Mei Terumi. I helped them find a new path. Your way, Nagato. It just creates more orphans. More monsters. More you. My way. Our way. It gives people a chance to choose. A chance to be something better. The 1-2 punch of their words, of a shared philosophy backed by impossible, tangible proof, a rebuilt homeland, a liberated nation, struck Nagato with the force of his own attack. He stared at these two impossible people, these true Uzumaki, who had faced a world that tried to break them and had answered not by breaking it back, but by rebuilding it. His entire life's purpose, his righteous, all-consuming pain, crumbled into dust. My entire life. A lie, Nagato whispered, his voice a broken, hollow rattle. The Rinnegan, his symbol of godhood, now felt like a mark of his own foolishness, a tool of his manipulation. Yahiko's dream. I twisted it. I became the very thing he fought against. Nagato, Konan whispered, her hand on his arm, tears flowing freely down her face. It wasn't just you. It was Toby. It was Danzo. It was this world. They poisoned you. But I am the one who. He looked past them, his gaze falling on the vast crater that was once Kumagakure. I did this. My pain. I made it the world's. His emaciated body trembled with a sudden, new resolve. This is my only atonement. With an agonizing, rattling groan, his hands, still pierced by the black rods, came together in a seal Naruto had never seen. Konan's eyes widened in sheer, abject terror. Nagato, no. You can't. Your chakra. You don't have enough. It will kill you. Don't do it. It is a fitting end, Nagato rasped, his eyes squeezing shut as he focused the last of his will. Geto, Art of Rin Rebirth. A massive, spectral head, the king of hell, erupted from the ground behind his throne, its mouth gaping open. A torrent of green, ethereal lights, souls, began to pour from its mouth, streaking across the sky towards the devastated village below. Kushina's eyes snapped wide. She felt it instantly. He's giving his life force. He's trying to revive them. She looked at Nagato and saw his vibrant red hair begin to fade, turning a shocking, dull white from the catastrophic strain. He was dying. Oh no, you don't, Kushina roared, her own protective, Uzumaki fury surging. She would not let her last known kin kill himself for an atonement he'd been tricked into needing. Naruto, now. She shrieked, her mind making a split-second, high-stakes gamble. He doesn't have enough power. He'll die before he can save them all. Give him your chakra. Fury chakra. Not the cloak. The way I taught you. Pour it into him. All of it. Naruto didn't hesitate. He slammed both of his hands onto the arms of Nagato's throne, and a colossal, pure, golden chakra, the true life-giving chakra of the Kyūbi, tempered by Naruto's own sun-like will, flooded into Nagato's emaciated body. Nagato gasped, his entire body seizing as the tidal wave of pure, warm energy surged through him. It wasn't the cold, dead power of the Geto Mazo. It was life. He felt his reserves not just replenish, but overflow. He instinctively channeled the colossal power boost into the jutsu. The stream of souls became a river, a torrent, a blinding green aurora that descended upon the crater. Down below, the survivors, A, B, Yugito, and the few others, looked on in stunned disbelief. The green lights sank into the thousands of bodies littering the rubble. One by one, Shinobi who were dead moments before gasped, their eyes fluttering open. Daru and C, their necks broken, sat up, confused. Samui, crushed under a building, opened her eyes. The civilians, the guards. They were all coming back. But the jutsu, supercharged by Kurama's vast reserves, didn't stop there. The overflowing life energy healed the living. I's broken arm snapped back into place. Yugito's wound sealed. B's bleeding stopped. The entire crater was washed in a wave of restorative energy. In the chamber, the jutsu completed. The spectral head vanished. Nagato slumped, panting, his hair still a vibrant red. He was still emaciated, still connected to the machine, but he was alive. He looked down at his hands, then at Kushina and Naruto, his Rinnegan wide with a confusion that eclipsed all other emotions. I'm alive. The jutsu. It worked. But I'm still alive. He stared at them, the full weight of his sins, now unclouded by Toby's philosophy, crashing down on him. Why? He whispered, his voice breaking. Why did you save me? I murdered them. I destroyed their home. I deserve to die. I have no reason to live anymore. Yahiko is gone. My purpose is gone. You're wrong, Kushina said, her voice soft but firm as she stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. You have a reason. You just lost sight of it. You're an Uzumaki. Your reason is to live. To endure. And now. To atone. Atone? Nagato's voice was hollow. How? How can I ever? Not by dying, she said. And not by rotting in this chair, chained to a lie. You'll atone by living a new life. By using what's left of your power, our power, to build, not destroy. She took a breath, her expression softening into a genuine, if weary, smile. Come with us, Nagato. Come to Uzushio. Konan and Nagato both stared. Uzushio? Our homeland, Kushina said, her eyes shining with that fierce, proud light. It's being rebuilt. As we speak. My son and I. We're bringing it back. We're building a new nation, a sanctuary for our clan, a place of peace, built on forgiveness. She squeezed his shoulder. It's a place for a lost child of the whirlpools to finally come home. Konan looked from Kushina to Nagato, this impossible offer hanging in the air. But she shook her head. We can't, she whispered. Kumagakure. It is our home. The people there. They've suffered so much. They still need Nagato. They need pain. We can't just abandon them. You can't go back there, Naruto said, his voice grim. Not now. Why? Konan asked, her defensive edge returning. Because he is still out there, Naruto said, his voice cold. Tobi. Madara. He knows you're alive. He knows you have the Rinnegan. And now, he knows you've betrayed him. Kumagakure isn't a shelter, Konan-san. It's a target. He'll go there, and he'll tear it apart just to find you. Kushina nodded, picking up the point. Uzushio is different. It's warded by ancient Uzumaki seals, layered so thick that not even a cage can get in. No one can enter without the express permission and blood of an Uzumaki. It's the safest place in the world for you right now. But the village? We can't just leave them leaderless. Konan argued, her loyalty torn. We won't, Kushina said, her mind already working. She made a hand sign, and a perfect, solid blood clone of herself appeared. It shimmered, and in an instant, it was a perfect replica of Konan. My blood clone. It can last for weeks, even months. It will have my memories of our conversation. It can go back, transformed as you, and begin the process of stabilizing the village, preparing them for a new, true leadership. It will buy you the time you need. Konan and Nagato were speechless at the generosity, the sheer tactical brilliance of the offer. You would do all this? Konan whispered. For us? After what we've done? She looked at Kushina, her gaze steady. What do you want in return? Kushina's expression became hard, not with anger, but with absolute resolve. She looked at Nagato, at the purple, rippling eyes that had cost so many lives. I want one thing, Kushina said. The only thing. I want you to give me those eyes. The eyes? Konan cried out, her paper wings flaring, her body instinctively moving to shield Nagato. You can't. It's his power. It's all he has left. Taking them will kill him. No, Kushina said, her voice like iron. They are already killing him. I told you. They are parasites, draining his Uzumaki life force to sustain themselves. They are the only reason he is in this machine. And they are the reason Tobi is manipulating you. They are part of his plan. We cannot, and will not, allow him to keep them. She is. Right, Konan. Nagato's voice was a weak, raspy sigh, but it was filled with a new, profound peace. He looked at Kushina, his Rinnegan filled with a weary acceptance. This path of pain. It was all a lie. Built on stolen power. Built on my own arrogance. He looked at his oldest friend. Yahiko is gone. My dream is dead. But their dream. He looked at Naruto, then at Kushina. A rebuilt home. A peace built on forgiveness. I want to see that world, Konan. I want to see them succeed. He turned his gaze back to Kushina. If the only price for that is to remove these parasites that have cost me everything, then I accept. Nagato, Konan sobbed, her resolve breaking. It's all right, Konan, he whispered. It's finally all right. Kushina nodded, her expression softening into one of grim respect. We have to do this quickly. I can already sense the revived Kumo Shinobi stirring. The Raikage will be here soon, and he'll be in no mood for explanations. She pulled a small, sealed scroll from her pouch. She unseals it, revealing a sterile medical kit with fine, chakra-conductive scalpels. I'm no medic, she said, her voice all business, but I learned a thing or two from Tsunade about precision. She stepped up to the throne. Konan watched, her hand over her mouth, but she didn't interfere. With a surgeon's steady hand, Kushina made 2 precise, swift incisions, severing the optic nerves and the chakra connections. She carefully extracted the 2 purple, rippling eyes and placed them in a preservation jar. Nagato's head slumped, his body now truly, utterly powerless. Kushina handed the jar to Naruto. "Seal this. On your chest. Now." Naruto nodded, biting his thumb and drawing a complex Uzumaki seal array over his sternum. He pressed the jar to the seal, and it sank into his skin, vanishing in a flash of blue light. "It's done. It's the safest place I know." "Good." Kushina turned back to the now eyeless Nagato. He was breathing, but just barely. His red hair had faded to a dull, pale white. His life force, with nothing left to power, was guttering like a final candle. "Konan. I'm cold," he whispered. "No, you're not," Kushina said, her voice suddenly fierce. "I didn't bring you this far just to watch you die, you idiot." She held out her bare arm to him. "Bite me." Nagato and Konan stared, confused. "What?" "I said, bite me," Kushina shouted, her patience snapping. "Before I change my mind, damn it." Almost by reaction, Nagato, guided by Konan, leaned forward and weakly bit down on Kushina's arm. The effect was instantaneous. He felt a jolt, not of chakra, but of pure, unadulterated life. It's like a flash flood of vitality, of warmth, of strength, pouring into his ravaged, broken body. He pulled away, gasping. Color was returning to his face. His white hair was already shifting, regaining its vibrant red sheen. He could feel his legs. Joints and tendons he hadn't used in decades are suddenly tingling, mending, filling with strength. It was a miracle. What was that?" Nagato rasped, his voice already stronger. "A secret of the Uzumaki main line," Kushina said, pulling down her sleeve over the bite mark. "We can heal, restore vitality, by giving a piece of our own. The stronger the Uzumaki, the stronger the effect. It's a gift. For family." Nagato stared, tears now flowing freely from his empty sockets. He had been given a new life. A new chance. "Now," Kushina said, "all business again." She scribbled on a piece of paper. "This is a guide. How to get to Uzushio. How to bypass the seals." She hands it to Konan. "You will have to fly over the ocean. When you reach these coordinates, Nagato must channel his own Uzumaki chakra into the water. The seals will recognize him and grant you passage. Go. Now. Heal him. Nurture him. Find your peace." Konan bows, her paper wings forming as she carefully lifts Nagato from the machine. "Kushina-sama. Naruto-san. We can never. Just get the hell out of here." Kushina cuts her off, but she's smiling. "I can sense the Raikage. He's on his way up. And he is pissed." Konan nodded. "One last thing," she said, her voice grim. "Toby. The man in the mask. He is not what he seems. He claims to be Madara, but his true power. It's something else. He can warp space, become intangible. He is the true leader of the Akatsuki. Be careful." "We will be," Naruto said, giving her a firm nod. With a final, grateful look, Konan and Nagato dissolved into a flurry of paper, flying out of the broken chamber and into the pre-dawn light, heading for a new home. Naruto and Kushina are left alone in the ruins, the rising sun just beginning to peek over the crater. "So," Naruto said, breaking the silence in the ruined, paper-strewn chamber. "That was a lot." Kushina just sighed, and for the first time in what feels like a lifetime, she laughed. A tired, relieved, slightly hysterical laugh. "You have no idea, Sochi. You have no idea." Naruto's golden white armor had faded, and he leaned heavily against the remains of Nagato's throne, his chakra coils scraped raw and empty. Kushina, having poured a significant amount of her own life force into Nagato, felt a bone-deep weariness she hadn't experienced since childbirth. Down in the crater, the Kumo Jinchuriki and Shinobi had just witnessed the impossible. The green aurora had washed over them, mending Ai's broken arm, healing Yugito's wounds, and, most miraculously, bringing Daru, Samui, and thousands of others back from the dead. The despair in the crater was replaced by a stunned, disbelieving silence as Shinobi and civilians alike slowly got to their feet. His arm healed, stared at his own hands, then up at the highest, shattered mountain peak, the source of the miracle. His grief, his rage, and his confusion warred within him. B. Yugito, he roared, his voice a thunderclap of pure, unadulterated command. With me. Now. A blue lightning comet, a blur of Baijuu-enhanced movement, and a flicker of blue flame shot up the cliff face, slamming onto the mountaintop in a spray of gravel. They found the ruined chamber, the strange machinery. And the two Uzumakis. Kushina. Brat, A roared, his eyes wild as he landed. He saw Naruto leaning heavily on the wall, and Kushina, pale and trembling. Where is he? What did you do? Naruto tensed, but Kushina put a hand on his arm. Play along, she sent in a quick, chakra-infused pulse. We are exhausted. We don't know anything. She looked up at the raging cage, her own expression a mask of profound, convincing weariness. He's gone, she panted, as if every word was a struggle. We pushed back. The one in the chair. He had some kind of forbidden jutsu. A life and death thing. She swayed, and Naruto, playing his part, stumbled to support her, though he was genuinely not far from collapsing himself. Mom. I'm so tired, he mumbled, his chakra reserves truly scraped bare. Kushina looked at her eyes wide. Naruto. He poured his chakra into the machine. Trying to counter it. It must have backfired on the user. All those souls. She shook her head, as if in disbelief. We need rest. Please. The details. They can wait. We're done. We're both completely spent. The Raikage stared at them. At the two Uzumaki, battered and drained, who had stood against a god and, by some impossible miracle, won. He looked at his own healed hands, and his thoughts went to the thousands of his living shinobi and civilians below. His need for answers, his fury, his grief, it was all crushed under an avalanche of a new, all-consuming emotion, gratitude. His village was gone, but his people. His people were alive. These two, this mother and son. They had just saved him from a despair he knew would have destroyed him. He bit his tongue, hard, forcing his rage down. The questions could wait. Their sacrifice had earned them that, and more. He took a deep, shuddering breath, his lightning armor dissipating. You're right, he said, his voice a low, rough growl, thick with an emotion he refused to name. Forgive me. You saved them. You saved everything. As they descended, the scene in the vast, moonlit crater crystallized. It was chaos, but a joyful, disbelieving chaos. Thousands of Kumo shinobi and civilians were stumbling through the rubble, staring at their hands, at the sky, at each other. They were touching their loved ones, tears of confusion and relief streaming down their faces. Daru and C, their necks no longer broken, were helping a dazed Samui out from under a slab of rock. They looked up as the Raikage landed, their expressions ones of sheer, dumbfounded awe. Lord Raikage. Daru called out, his voice shaking. You're alive. We're all alive. I's voice boomed, and this time, it was not with rage, but with a profound, thunderous relief that washed over his people. The crowd saw him, and a cheer went up. Then, they saw who he was with. They saw Kushina and Naruto, battered, exhausted, and being supported by B and Yugito. A silence fell, thicker and more profound than the one after the destruction. Samui, her calm broken, pointed a trembling finger. It was them, she breathed, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. I saw. A golden light. A god. And then. We were back. They did this. The cry started as a whisper and grew into a roar. They saved us. The Uzumaki. Heroes. The entire surviving population of Kumagakure surged forward, a wave of pure, grateful jubilation. They weren't just allies, they were saviors, miracle workers. Kushina and Naruto, caught in the center of the emotional storm, were overwhelmed. This was the moment. Naruto, his reserves truly scraped bare by the fight, the gravity seal, and the Rin rebirth, felt the last of his adrenaline leave him. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, his exhaustion finally claiming him for real. Naruto, Kushina cried out, her acting vanishing as real panic took over. Seeing her son fall, her own body, which had given so much of its vitality to Nagato, finally reached its limit. She put a hand to her head, Sochi. And artfully slumped to the side, her consciousness fading into a genuine, exhausted faint. Medics. I's roar cut through the celebration like a thunderbolt. Get them to a tent. Now. Guard them with your lives. The jubilation was galvanized into frantic, purposeful action. A medical tent was set up in seconds, and Konoha's heroes were rushed inside. His His cage persona now fully engaged, turned to his subordinates, his voice barking orders that would decide the fate of his village. Daru. Take 20 squads. Go to Reserve Unit B. Take all the emergency funds. Go to the surrounding towns and buy every scrap of food, water, and medical supplies you can find. Go. Mabui. He barked at his aide, who had just been revived. Assemble a messenger team. They go to Konoha. Inform the Hokage of what has transpired. The Akatsuki has declared war on us. And tell him his shinobi have performed a miracle. We are in their debt. As Daru's squads fanned out across the land of lightning, they carried their unbelievable story with them. Kumo is gone. A god named Pain attacked the Uzumakis. They brought thousands back from the dead. The rumor mill began to grind, spreading tales of the Battle of Kumo Crater across the shinobi world like wildfire. A watched the activity, his gaze hardening. He looked at the medical tent where his allies lay. He knew his next duty. B. Yugito. Bro? You're with me. We head to the capital. The lightning daimyo must hear this from me, directly. He clenched his fist. The world thinks Kumo is weak, destroyed. We must show them we are not broken. Leaving Daru and Mabui in charge of the staggering reconstruction effort, the Raikage and his two fellow Jinchuriki, the living symbols of Kumo's power, leapt from the crater, heading for the capital. The political game was already in motion. Alright guys, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. As always, the rest of the story is already out over on Patreon, link to that will be in the description. Anyways, until next time, peace.